So in this video, we are going to talk about how lumber is going to save us. That's right, the Canadian lumber and the taxing of Canadian lumber has caused housing prices to just explode or be very expensive, and the only way that we can actually save the day is by lowering the lumber cost. Now, if you actually believe that, then you are probably going to fall for a lot of scams and misinformation and everything else that's out there that then causes the problems we now face, which is the massive amounts of misinformation leading people in the wrong direction. I see this happening every day within lumber. Now, I shared on a video earlier today, we were doing a live stream, Kevin O'Leary talking about the lumber industry. And it is really unfortunate that this is sort of the like this sort of mindset, the problem that I see within this narrative that he is delivering is that it literally leads people to not see or focus in on anything else except for that problem. Now, I'm going to play this for you real quick. Those who had joined me earlier in today's live stream, you guys heard me play this one earlier, but I'm going to do it again here for you guys just so we can hear it. Because to me, it's like, man, once I heard this, I was like, man, I have got to correct this situation. I got to get people to know and hear what it is that's truly happening out there. All right, let's go.
The American dream of buying a home now out of reach for many with housing costs rapidly outpacing wage growth. Can they do anything? What should they do?
Housing's really tough. It's really tough because you've got so many elements. Let's start from the top. Mortgage rates, 2 rate cuts, 25 basis points each, hasn't made a dent in the mortgage markets because these are longer term.
So before I get started on the lumber part of things, anybody else catch the idea that the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates is supposed to bring mortgage rates down? Like he was trying to tie those two together. Everybody knows that those two things are not tied together. Yet everybody wants to tie them together. The idea of lowering mortgage rates comes down with the belief that there is going to be lesser interest rates or lowering interest rates going into the future. That's what lowers it down. The actual Fed adjustment doesn't really do anything. So when he's trying to correlate these two together, it's very misleading.
5, 7, 10-year, whatever. And so rates haven't really moved because people are concerned about that 3% inflation rate. That's number one. Number two, there's not a lot of freedom yet. Like, housing's very local. So let's just take California, massive market. The regulatory environment's still very punitive.
Now, I get that part, the regulatory part of things, like the permitting and getting all the, all the process down before you even start to build, like just the regulations within it. I get that part. That is very expensive and not something that was, say, really prevalent within the building industries, say decades ago. That is an issue, but it's this next issue that he talks about. And I can't imagine, like, if you just immediately alleviate all the regulations or something, like, you could do that. Like, I don't know exactly how that would operate. I'm sure you could probably relieve some regulations that are in there, but they're put there for a reason. And most of the time, you're going to find that if you start to remove these things, you're going to start causing other things to happen that you weren't expecting.
All those burned down houses, very tough to rebuild on them right now. So you got to change regulation. And then you got to really...
Now, this part right here, this is what kills me. Like, I don't know where it is these people get this information, but I'm going to play it here for you.
See, little problem right now. Softwood lumber input costs, no deal with Canada yet. Countries are still having their issues. And so 25% on the input price of softwood. You can't fix that.
Okay. What is he talking about? What in the world is he talking about? Lumber prices are about as cheap as I have seen them in a very long time. This consistently, this low. $550 per thousand on a lumber futures. If you were to go back to 2018, that would have been expensive. Today, the mills hardly operate at that level. They shut production down. They go into curtailment. They are not interested in selling at $550 per thousand. In fact, today I think it dropped all the way down into like $530 per thousand. Lumber mill curtailments, it means that there is low demand. All the Canadian lumber in the world doesn't change that. This is what I find interesting about this whole statement, is that somehow we are going to have cheaper lumber prices in the future. Somehow this Canadian tax was, or this tax on Canadian lumber wasn't taking place. And I'm like, do you not see the fact that lumber is about as cheap as it's going to get? Like if it went any cheaper than this, all the mills would shut down completely. It can't get in. If it got any cheaper than this, it would be incredibly painful for these mills. And somehow we can save housing, right? Or bring housing if we alleviate this nasty little problem that doesn't exist. This nasty little problem that he is manifesting out of nowhere literally is only in his head. It doesn't exist anywhere in reality. However, nobody really knows that, because if you don't know the lumber industry, his story sounds really good. You know, I mean, it does. It sounds really good. Let me play it again for you, because it just, like, you know, it's so, like, I don't know where he's getting it. It's like literally he's making it up.
See, little problem right now. Softwood lumber input costs. No deal with Canada yet. Countries are still having their issues, and so 25% on the input price of softwood. You can't fix that overnight. So
it's not a problem.
Cut a Canadian deal.
That's the thing. It's not a problem that needs to be fixed. You don't need to cut a Canadian deal, right? That's not the problem. There's no problem there. You're making that up. You're talking about something that doesn't exist. There's no problem
there. Get it down to a reciprocal rate, maybe 8% or something on softwood.
That won't make any difference. Like literally none. I mean, it might if you're like a trader or something, a broker inside of that, and then those 8% or something like that, that might make a big deal as far as the trade goes. But when it comes to building a house, that is such an insignificant portion of it. That 10% on lumber, that will make very little difference. In fact, there's an article I left down in the description for you guys. Let me bring it up here so I can read from it. All right. This is from PR Newswire. I'm sorry, I'm not terribly familiar with this publication, but it's the U.S. Lumber Coalition response to Governor Haley misstatements regarding softwood lumber. Yeah, well, maybe this is where Kevin got it. Maybe she got it from Kevin. I don't know. I'm sorry, he did. Excuse me. Where am I looking at? All right, Governor Healy recently echoed misleading talking points by Canada and the National Association of Home Builders that U.S. duties and tariffs against unfairly traded Canadian lumber imports causes housing prices affordability issues. BS. Nothing could be further from the truth. Like, just as literally fabricated misinformation that is delivered to the people to try and earn some votes, I guess. I don't know what the point of this is, but this is so inaccurate. Right? Such misleading and false statements has been repeatedly debunked by the NAHB owns data and ignore the facts on the ground. It goes on to say this, quoted, Governor Healy, like all U.S. governors, should be for U.S. industries and workers and should understand the facts before taking sides with the foreign industries and countries engaged in unfair trade practices against the United States. This is coming from Zoltan van Heiningen. I don't know how to say his last name. Executive Director of the U.S. Lumber Coalition. Quote going on to say there's, had Governor Healy and her staff done their research before her unfortunate remarks, they would have understood that softwood lumber prices have been lower, not higher, since the imposition of higher duties on President Trump's additional 10% tariff on lumber. That's right, they've gotten cheaper. That's what I tried to tell people too. It's just like when they're saying, "Oh, what's going to do to lumber?" I said, "Don't worry about it. It's not going to be anything." Right? In fact, it's going to be a big nothing. And people are like, a lot of them left the channel, and I'm like, well, see, I know you'll be back because I'm going to be accurate on this one again. And I mean, I don't mean to sound so cocky about it, but this is the reality of the situation that we now face. When I'm looking at this at boots on the ground, and I'm like, man, there's not a lot of sales, and I'm watching my buddies who are up in the woods saying, man, we're not cutting as many trees, and we're not hauling them off into the mills, and I'm thinking to myself, man, this is not good. And when I have a vendor who has huge gaps inside of their inventory, I'm thinking to myself, this is a very depressed market. This is not doing well. Not doing well at all. And as far as like expensive lumber goes, trying to bring cheaper lumber, if you brought lumber any cheaper to this market, you would completely devastate the mills. It would be over. It would shut them down completely. The governor and her staff would do well to understand that the U.S. production capacity has increased by over 8 billion board feet since 2016 when the duties and later tariffs went into effect. The U.S. producers, unfortunately, it does talk about the increase in production, but then it doesn't talk about the decrease in production that has also happened. So, unfortunately, there's some misinformation that's in there, but I'm here to deliver the correct stuff. So I'm here to counter that point as well, saying, yes, it did increase production capabilities or capacity, but we've also depleted that as well at the same time. So, there's two ways of looking at that, because how you are actually looking at the numbers comparatively to where it is. This article came out in November, right? So it isn't that old. But if you were to look at, say, the production capacity 2 years ago, it would probably be much higher than it is today, is all I guess I'm getting at, right? Because there's been a lot of mill curtailments and shutdowns since then. So what is the real number today? Well, it's probably less than what it is that he's explaining. But who knows, right? The governor and her staff would do well to understand that the U.S. lumber production capacity has increased by over 8 billion board feet since 2016, when duties and later tariffs went into effect. The U.S. producers supplying over 36 billion additional board feet of American-made lumber to build American homes. Furthermore, it is Canada's softwood lumber companies who will pay virtually all the duties and tariffs, not the U.S. consumer. The cost of lumber makes up less than 2% of the total cost of a new home. Right? I think that might be a bit low. I think it's a little higher than that, but I guess it depends on how extravagant of the cabinets and flooring and siding and doors and windows and all the other stuff that you put in there, because lumber cost doesn't really go up with the quality of the house, right? Like the quality of the house doesn't really make any difference when it comes to the framing. The framing is all the same. It's just how many pieces you're actually using. So whether or not you're building a 1,100 square foot ranch style home or some 5,000 square foot, 3-story, big old palace of a place, the studs in the walls are the same studs, right? It's just one has more of them than the other. But the siding, the doors, the windows, the cabinetry, all that other stuff, that can be a much different quality and style that it adds a lot of cost to the house. So again, if you're building a cheap ranch style home, the cost of the lumber portion of it could be much higher than 2%, even though the overall cost of the house might be less. You see where I'm getting at? This 2% cost on the total cost, that's relative. The cost of lumber makes up less than 2% of the total cost of the new home, and hence never has and never will be a factor in the housing affordability. I disagree, right? Because the unavailable lumber then made it very difficult to build a home. All right? And so it will very much drive affordability. So I disagree with that statement, straight up. Excuse me. In fact, lumber prices have been so depressed that builder companies have boosted in their earning calls that they will try to use those low prices to their advantage when negotiating deals in the coming years. We'll see about that. An attack on trade, law enforcement, and common sense targeted tariff policies such as the 10% lumber tariff is an attack on U.S. workers, U.S. companies, and their communities. Dun, dun, dun. And we will speak up to defend ourselves against any such attacks and against all Canadian and foreign unfair trade practices. Pretty interesting statements there. I don't necessarily agree with all that stuff, but I definitely agree with the idea that the tariffs were not going to drive up the lumber prices to the point that it was going to cause an issue within the housing industry. Many people were not in agreement with that, and I totally get why, because misinformation that's coming from the higher ups. Like, you think about it. Think about what Kevin O'Leary was saying about the nasty little problem with Canadian lumber, and I'm like, that doesn't exist. And then here it is. It's being pushed by the Massachusetts Governor Healy, who's essentially saying something of this very same thing. All right. And I'm like boots on the ground dude from middle of the Pacific Northwest, actually up in the northwest corner of Oregon, but essentially in the Pacific Northwest going, this is not like, I don't know where it is that these people have fabricated this story from. Like, I guess if you like to use your imagination, it's a very compelling story. Right. And that's really where the problem starts to lie. Because if this misinformation is so prevalent within the lumber industry, I know it's pretty much running rampant through all the rest of the industries as well. Now, I understand what the case is here, right? Because it doesn't really matter what the truth is or what the reality is or anything else like that. It literally comes down to who can tell the best story. And if the story that the Massachusetts governor is well received, like they're all like, oh man, this person is telling it best. I love their story. They're the one. They're blaming it on all this other greed and manipulation. That's the one, man. That's the story. That's the one that's going to run most prevalent, regardless of the truth. And this is an unfortunate case that ends up taking place with most stories within the economy. Is that it comes down to who can tell the best story on it. Like, I have a really good lumber story that I can tell, and when I tell that lumber story, it ends up getting a lot of attention, especially if I'm talking about like some wild, crazy misinformation, or not misinformation, but some wild information that everybody else is missing out there. Then it really comes down to like shock and awe event, it's just like who can shock the people the most with their story that they're telling. It's not, I don't know where that's helpful. I understand where it's profitable, I understand where it's popular, I understand where it's probably going to be what is noticed the most and runs the narrative, but I'm not sure how that's helpful, because I don't believe it is. So as I think about how it is that I've come across the information and shared it here on this channel regularly, as much as I can, I would hope that the people have taken that in consideration, that most of the stuff that I have shared with them is usually contrary to just about every single thing I've ever read out there when it comes to information about the industry that I'm in. Like, I've never seen anything accurate. Ever. I mean, they hit on it sometimes, like they'll get really, really close, but then, they'll screw it all up one way or the other by throwing in this common narrative that everybody seems to want to hear in order to sell the article. And it's just sad, I mean, but I get it. I mean, I get it now. What are you going to do? So that's why I come out here and I share it with you guys, so that you have a better understanding of what is truly happening within the industry. When I'm telling you, it's just like, man, don't stress about them Canadian lumber tariffs. That's going to be a big nothing burger at the end of the day. And you're really going to have to worry about, like, prices coming down and curtailments and stuff like that happening. People are like, dude, man, that is so far off from what everybody else is saying. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I get it. I get that part. But when we look at it for the reality of the situation, which means that most of the information that you're looking at is probably going to be inaccurate, I'm pretty sure that's going to be the case for just about anything else out there. All right. I kind of babbled on here a lot. What do we got going on? The general way to count the number of studs in a 16-inch on center framed house is to count one stud per foot of wall. 100 walls is about 100 studs, with corners, windows, and doors considered, just for your information. Yep, absolutely. That is the easiest way to do takeoffs. And then again, like if you're, for every 100 feet of wall, you want to get 300 feet of random length lumber to do plate stock, right? So you'll have a single bottom plate and two top plates. And so you'll need 300 lineal feet of plate stock again. Actually a little bit more than that because you're probably going to end up having waste and stuff like that. But, you triple up the lineal footage of wall so that you can get your plate stock in there. All right, guys. All-nighter hider still add 20% to order for short changes in coals. Always back for electric fire blocking. Yeah, I do 10% myself, but 20% is probably pretty common out there. You can always use bricks. Hey, Yui, Merry Christmas to you and your family from Northern Canada. Well, thank you very much. Merry Christmas to you as well. All right, 100 feet and pipe heat tape, 2 bids, Canada, 2,300, China via Texas, 320, no brainerd. Canada salesman sounded pissed when I qualified myself, huh? All right, Simon, I have been in precious metals and stones for nearly 3 decades. They never get it right in the industry either. Yeah, and this is the unfortunate circumstances that we now face within the. Here's the problem. Everybody wants to make money. Nobody is out there really actually wanting or pushing to be helpful and useful because ultimately everybody wants to make money. And by making money, you have to tell the best story. If you do not tell a story that is shocking, clever, intriguing, something of that nature, then people generally are not going to want to watch it. Right? They're not going to want to read it. They're not going to do anything else like that. And therefore, the newspaper, or whatever, the news program, it wouldn't exist. It wouldn't exist if it was there to spread the truth, because nobody wants it. Everybody wants a shock and awe event. See, I mean, I know, like, even the video that I did yesterday that's gotten very popular, I mean, the headline alone, I'm sure, is what caught people's attention. I've never seen this before, or whatever I titled it. The information within it was good. I mean, I thought it was good, but I think all my information is good. So, I mean, whether it's that video or any other video, I think they're all good myself. But I understand, like, what's happening there is just like people are like, they saw the title of the video and they're thinking, oh man, there's information in here I can't live without. And then, that's what gets them to click on the video. But if I was to tell them, it was just like, here's the truth inside of your lumber story, they're not telling you, I might get a 50-50 chance of getting their attention. Let me see. There's some notes down here. West Fraser, total deposits through Q3 of 2025, 971 million. Canfor, 854 million. Domtar. I remember you guys were making fun of me of that one. 701 million cash deposits. See, this one's bragging up all these companies: West Fraser, Canfor, Domtar, Interfor, West Fraser, Western Forest Products, Conifex, Green First. Now, I'm not sure about Conifex or Green First, but definitely all the other ones. Interfor, Domtar, Canfor, and West Fraser, all those have shut down massive production over the last few months and years. All of them. All right, so as they're bragging it up about how much they've actually done, and those are all Canadian companies too. That's what I think is funny about it. Every one of those is a Canadian company. They're operating in the United States. I don't know about Domtar, but the other ones do. Interfor, I think Interfor at one point had more operations going on in the United States than they did in Canada. That's like, to know and understand the industry for the reality of the situation, not for what you hope for or what you are, I mean, like, I think the idea that, like, somehow the tariff on Canadian lumber was going to destroy everything. And I think people who were against Trump were really hopeful for that. Like, they wanted that to happen. Like, they wanted to see the entire industry go down so they could point the finger, gotcha, sucker, and I'm thinking that's not a good idea, right? Does that sound right? Does that sound like a good idea? Of course not, right? That's a terrible idea. And then it didn't really work out that way, but they continue on with the story. And that's what I find so amusing about this whole thing. And I'm like, well, I don't know what you guys are going to do out there, but it's going to be very difficult to try and unwind the idea of this is going to destroy the housing prices with all this massive cost and lumber prices and all that other stuff, only to have to backpedal and then understand why it didn't happen, and that they play the game like it's still going on. Yeah. It's like what I just cannot afford that, and who can? I pay cash for most purchases. That way they cannot push that little device in my face asking for a tip. I'm not a fan of adding gratuity into the bill as though I don't have a choice. Okay, who is tired of everyone expects tips at 20% everywhere we go? You know what's kind of funny about it is that my wife was in the service industry for a long time, and everywhere we tipped way more, like beyond what anybody else ever did. So now that it's like this tip culture or whatever, it is just like everybody's kind of complaining about it. It's like, oh well, I kind of did that all the time anyway. Like not so much anymore because I don't, especially when I ran out of money. But the idea of tipping like a lot or over tipping, that was kind of a common trait for us to do just because we were in the service industry anyway. Most of the waitresses and bartenders usually over tip, right, on purpose because that's how they make their living too. The Cantillon effect, do they contain their people when they want to go overseas for a better life? No. I mean, when they talk about like, do they prevent migration away, like, the opposite of immigration, like migrating away from the location. He talks about people doing that. They're forced to, right? But here you have like border issues and like to the point that you just simply can't leave. So even the idea, like a lot of people will try to, move to a different state or to a different city or something like that to get better, get a better occupation or something like that. And so, to move overseas is a very real possibility if you have the capability of doing it in order to seek out a better way of life. And that's what I would imagine people would do if they were forced into that situation. But most people won't even have the ability to leave because they just can't even get out of the country anyway. So you're stuck here in this country. Back in Cantillon's day, they didn't necessarily have the same like prevention of border crossings. What do you think of buying rental properties at today's prices? Is it overpriced, or do you think it is going to keep going? Well, everything can, who can tell the future? Everything can go up, down, or sideways. Here's the problem that we face is that we are definitely going into a K-shaped economy, right? There's inequality, major division between the rich and the poor. Now, the difference is going to be those who hold assets and those who don't. Right? Those who put themselves in a position of acquiring assets and those who put themselves in a position of acquiring debt. So now there's two ways of going about life. When you grow up, right, and you get a job and you go out there and after college or high school, whatever it is you're doing, and you get that first job, you have choices to make from that point on. Most of the time, what we're going to find now is that people are going to be very limited on how much they can actually contribute into buying assets at a very young age. Unless they are doing side hustles or something else out there, the day job is probably going to be very limited on their capabilities. Now, using that day job to try and get through life is going to then put you on the bottom side of the wedge because you are not going to keep up with the people who are even putting $50 away. Like if you and your buddy both graduate high school at the exact same time and you go to work and one of you is saving $50 a month every single month for the rest of his life and the other one doesn't, you can tell that that one who is saved for the entire time is probably going to be sitting in a lot of assets comparatively to the one who didn't. Now, that's the unfortunate situation we now face. It doesn't matter how educated you get or how good of a job you get. And this is the very misleading part of like the college education degree thing, is that you were promised, people were promised that if you get a degree, you're going to earn a lot of money. But it doesn't matter how much money you earn, and that's the problem. That you can't go work and earn money, work a 9-to-5 job. There's just simply not enough hours in the day to work it. Right? You need to figure out a way to make money while you are sleeping, and that is through asset allocations, through rental properties, dividend-paying stocks, businesses, something like that. The people who then go and work really, really, really hard to get a really, really, really good job and go deep into debt to do that are going to find themselves on the bottom side of the wedge, even if they have a good job, because a good job sucks, and you're going to be spending all your extra money making interest payments on a student loan debt instead of taking extra money and moving it towards asset purchases. That's the difference inside of it. It doesn't matter how good your job is going to be. If you are in a good job with a lot of debt because you had gone for that degree to get the good job, it doesn't benefit you. There was a time it was okay. Because if you had a degree and a good job, hey, you had a good job and you can make the debt payment and still had a decent life that came from it. But now even a good job sucks, so it's not going to benefit you any. You're just going to be slightly better than people who didn't get the degree. And in fact, it's probably going to be worse because you're going to be making payment on that degree, which is probably going to put you right back in the same position as the other person who didn't get the degree to begin with. So all this working class stuff fails. It doesn't work anymore. You can go ahead and just set that off to the side and realize that ain't going to do it. What is going to do it is asset allocation. Now, a lot of people will just go into things like silver and say, oh man, I bought silver and it was $15 and look how awesome I am now. Hey, that's a great story, man, and that's really cool. But people today don't get to use that same story again unless they're thinking that silver is going to go up to $500 an ounce. And it very well could, but that's a long shot, right? That's a long shot. To hope and wish and dream and pray that it does. And then once it does go to $500 an ounce, are you really going to want to sell it? Like, there's more buyers of silver today than there is sellers at $70 an ounce because they're so worried about what's happening out there within the economy that they're willing to go down and spend $70 on ounces of silver to try and get their money out of the system and into that, asset that's in their hand that's outside of that third-party risk. I totally get why, but dang. In order to get the same return from $30 to $70, you would have to see silver go up over $150 an ounce. That's kind of scary, like to think that how fast it's happening. If it does, cool. For guys like, us who have been stacking for a long time, it's a great feeling to be in. But the idea that that is something that you can count on, I think it's a bit speculative in that fashion. Hey, it might work. Me personally, dividend-paying stocks, rental properties, businesses, more education and skills are something that's going to level you up so that you can then acquire more in your life. But to think that you're going to use a day job to do it, it's probably going to be very difficult. Unless you're disciplined. Like if you're disciplined, you can do it just fine. But like the girl who, like we were talking about earlier, she goes, can somebody explain to me how it is that this $40,000 loan is going to have an additional $77,000 put on top of it? Like, who is smoking crack that thinks that that's a good idea? And I'm like, right here, I think that's a good idea. If I gave you $40,000 and you told me in 20 years you're going to bring it back and I'm going to have $118,000 or whatever it is that I have from that, I'm going to be like, all about it. I mean, yeah, hook me up, man. Here's my 40 grand. Here's, I get my 13%. That sounds very reasonable. In fact, it sounds great, right? And for a lot of people, that is a very reasonable expectation. But yet somehow, if you do it in a student loan, it's not. Like, I'm sorry. See, here's the difference, right? You go and have the loan that then provides you with the degree, and you use the degree to then pay back the loan. That's how that works. You don't get to borrow the money and then say, oh man, I have to pay back all this interest. It was like, yeah, you don't get it for free. Like, that's not the way it works. You got to pay for it. And if you don't have it, then you got to borrow it. And if you're borrowing it, somebody out there is saying, hey, I would like to get a return on my money. Is that okay? Like, to make some money off of my money? Like, if I can't use it and you're going to use it, shouldn't I get paid for that? Like, you're renting my money from me, right? So, yeah, you have to pay. And that's the unfortunate part that a lot of people are going to be facing going into the future is they just don't understand that concept that the more that they load up on debt and paying interest on that debt, what they are not doing is buying into assets. All their extra money is going into interest payments. And I love how people give it excuses. They love giving excuses. Well, I have I have to have this high quality vehicle, and I have to have all these things, and there's all these have-to-have-tos. And I'm like, okay, keep telling me about how much you have to have, and then tell me how you can't get into assets. And then, I'd love to hear your story about who it is you're going to blame for that. I'm driving a 97 Suburban. What are you driving? This month I'm going to be buying some, a little bit more. A little bit more into the 401k, a little bit more Bitcoin, a little bit more, well, probably not so much silver right now because I never buy anything at their all-time high. But I buy into a little bit of everything all the time because I always try to keep my expenses incredibly low. If I went out and got a new truck, there goes all my extra, right? All my asset allocation would be out the window. It'd be like having a student loan debt. I cannot buy real estate, but I BlackRock stock, but I bought BlackRock stock since they are into the business of buying properties. Yeah, there's and this is the thing. Okay, so institutional investors, that's essentially what it is, right? BlackRock buying into these properties. So if you just imagine institutional investors who are buying it, but then here, you as a regular individual is like, oh man, I can't buy a house, right? Because of these institutional investors. But then us invest with that, and they buy the houses that we can't buy. You see how this is it's just like, man, if we can't get into property, we better buy a piece of the property. And in order to do that, we have to go and contribute to the institutional investors to exacerbate the, to cause the problem, make the problem worse. Now, it's not like I'm not blaming you by any means. Don't get me wrong. Like, I would buy into real estate investment trust myself, or I would buy into these type of companies in order to take advantage of that particular situation. But that's really ultimately what's going on, right? I mean, they wouldn't have the money to do it if you didn't buy into their stock. Government subsidies is never a good long-term plan, and it's detrimental in the short term. Government always bad, always. Yeah, I really I can never really see where government actually helps. Like, they can help in a very limited short-term aspect, come in and emergency crisis situations to help the people out. Totally get that part of it. But these long-term social conditioning attempts, I don't know what the hell they did back in the day, back in Obama and Clinton's day or something, to all of a sudden just provide mortgages for anybody who wanted one. That was probably about the dumbest thing in the entire world. At the time, it seemed great for everybody, Everybody should get a loan for a house. It was just you can't give everybody a loan for a house. There's not enough houses for everybody. It was just that doesn't make any sense. If everybody has the capability of getting a loan for a house, where do you think the house prices are going to go? If everybody could show up to buy a house and they were like, well, which one of you wants to pay the most? And it was since all of you have access to a loan now, who wants to pay the highest price? It wasn't you can't bring houses to people. You can only you can only build enough. All right, Simon, I keep hearing housing shortages. I think 500K average house at $20 cultural minimum wage with 2 workers working 40 hours each week. They still cannot afford the houses. The math does not work. Yeah, absolutely. That's because of the condition of the environment that we are in within this economy. You, as the working class individual, no longer have the ability to buy a house. It's not there. They didn't create this situation to be done this way. This is what it's manifested into. All right. This is what it's gone into. When you have ever increasing amounts of new money that pours into the system, there is going to be a concentration of wealth, and there is no better sign of that than through property allocation. right? That's the problem we now face, is that there is massive inequality, and that inequality is then denying the average everyday person from the ability to become a property owner. They can't switch, they can't fix this. That's the problem. It can't be fixed. You're not going to get two average working jobs to work. It's not going to work. Now, those two people can then figure out how to get side hustles, online sales, something out there to get the extra money, because there's so many different ways of making money out there that there is a possibility of being able to acquire a house. You can house hack. You can do all kinds of things to try and figure out what it is that you need to do to become a property owner. But if you expect those two jobs, those two day jobs to do it, it's not, right? It's not going to work. And you can save 20% or more even. It doesn't matter. Your payment's still, like, you're not going to be able to afford the payment with the interest rates as elevated as they are. So it's not a matter of trying to figure out what it is that they need to do to fix the system, because they're not going to fix it. It's not a fixable thing. You have to figure out what it is that you need to do. I mean, think about how many people are out there doing so many things outside of their day job, right? How many ways there is to make money out there? You have to compete against those people. And that's unfortunate, I know, but that's the case that we now face, is that you have to figure out other ways of making money. And I get it, man. Like, people tell me all the time, you don't understand. I already work 12 hours a day and I don't have enough. It sucks. It's not fair. You're right. And it's not going to get any easier. And so if you're sitting in a position in which you're working 12 hours a day every single day and you still can't make ends meet, I would really have to consider what it is that you're doing for your lifestyle, because 12 hours a day is a lot of money. Now, if you're living in San Francisco and you're making minimum wage or something, that's not a lot of money. I get it. You're in the wrong area for what you're doing. It's not fair. You have to move. Right? Like, very much. Like, I was very close to having to leave my area that I'm in. I was very close to having to leave Astoria because I couldn't find a place to live. Right? I could not find a place to rent in Astoria. There was rent moratoriums. There was no place to rent. There was very few houses for sale. And I literally felt like I was forced into buying this house. Like, I had no other choice. It was either that or leave. And I didn't want to leave my area. I had everything going on here. My job was here. My family was here. My network's here. Everything was here. So all of a sudden, I'm just supposed to pick up and just move because I can't find a place to live, not by choice, but by force. I got to reestablish a whole new life someplace else. Yeah, that was going to be the case. That was very much the case. But I was able to figure it out so I could stay. And it took a lot out of me. It took a lot to stay here. So as people try to figure out a way to fix it, they're going to end up falling behind, because there is no fixing it. What you have to do is figure out what it is that you need to do to get more money in, to cut back on your expenses, right? Earn more, require less. And as crappy as that might feel for a lot of people who say, man, I don't want to work my entire life just to, be a slave or whatever. It's just like, well, then don't. See what happens. All right? I know. Wait here. See I'll go get help. You just wait right there. What are you going to do? You don't have any other choice. This isn't fair. Survival of the fittest. And if you can't figure out that you need to do more than your neighbor is doing in order to be able to compete against them, I don't know what it is that I need to tell you. You can't go get a factory job like you did back in the 60s and 70s, even in the 80s, maybe even 90s, right? You used to be able to just go and get a really decent, manufacturing type job, and then that would be enough. You just had to be somewhat disciplined with that, and it would pay you enough to do everything you needed to do. Right? You could save for the retirement, you could buy the house, you could raise the family and all that other stuff. If you were somewhat disciplined, that was a very real possibility. Today, that is out the window. And there's no point in trying to believe it's coming back. And all the politicians who try to sell you on the idea of bringing it back are literally feeding you false hopes. They really need to read the Cantillon essay and then try to defend themselves against that. Because they can't, they won't, and they will realize that they are lying to you. Maybe they're just lying to themselves, and they're convincing you of their lies. Simon, I'm 59 years old, first Generation X all day. When we were kids, John the Painter could raise a family alone working. Yep, absolutely. And again, why doesn't it work anymore? Right? I know it's their fault. Right? It's their fault. They did it. I know. It's liberal politics. That's what did it. Or no, wait a minute. It's corporate greed. Ha! Right? All those things are symptoms. Every bit of it. It's ever-increasing amounts of new money that pours into the system, separating the rich from the poor. That's what does it. Every single time. If you don't have the money, who does? The rich. The rich have concentrated it, and they put it in the properties. And now they have properties to the point that they are the owners of it, and everybody else is wondering why they can't afford one. It's just like, well, maybe if you were closer to the new money, but you're not, because your manufacturing job is over there, over the seas somewhere, and so the new money goes over there, All right, absolutely not. We allowed it. Glad I didn't move to a condo in the city. Property taxes went up to pay for the city budget. Did John the Painter really work? My president says that McDonald's is tremendous food. He recommends it. Well, yeah. I mean, I can understand that coming from a corporate guy like that. In fact, he probably gets paid to say that, Like, there's really nothing that I think that dude does that he doesn't get paid to do. Like, every single thing. When he started selling the Bible, like he was signing the Bible and selling it, I thought, damn, like, that is genius. Selling a book he didn't even write. That's that's the way to do it, man. I just laughed. I couldn't believe that one. I'm like, man, it's selling a book he didn't even write. I'm gonna do that with the Cantillon essay. And that's what I did. I started selling the Cantillon essay. Anyway. Does Cantillon say that people trying to leave their country for greener pastures will be held in by their own country? I would imagine that there's probably cases of that. He doesn't get specific about how a country is going to act because every single ruler is going to be different about it. He does talk about when the gold in the country starts to export. He does talk about how rulers will make laws to prevent the exporting of gold, right? And then in that sense, he starts naming, specific groups of people and stuff like that. But I've never really seen anything in the Cantillon essay talking about the prevention of people leaving and stuff like that. Like, I'm sure that's probably been a case at times. But, well, here. You guys know Vladimir the Impaler, right? Like, so Vlad the Impaler. This guy was a trip, man. I don't know if anybody's really heard his backstory, but this dude was a trip. He was actually I wouldn't necessarily a war prize. Like, that doesn't make sense in the way that is him. His dad was fighting another country and ruled, basically dominated over him. And when he fought this other country, and he was like, okay, well, I won. I'm a ruler of your country, but I don't really want to rule your country, so just rule yourself, just be normal. Or whatever. And he had given Vlad over. He was like, here's my son, and they're like, okay, so we're going to take your son so that you don't attack us again. And then, essentially the enemy raised the son. This is this guy Vlad, right? Which is a really trippy thing to think, right? But, apparently this is how the story goes down. Well, later on, the old man passes, Vlad comes back to rule the country, right? So he's really young, and he's been ruled by this, or been essentially taught by this, enemy country. And he comes back to his own country to start ruling, and he finds there's this major inequality that has taken place, right? So you got these massive amounts of poor people, and you got these elitists who are up in the country. And it's like, okay, so what do we do about all this, right? We got a bunch of people who are essentially on this lower class that aren't really benefiting anywhere here, and it's hard to deal with them. So he was like, okay, so we gotta have a plan for you guys to figure you out, right? Because obviously there's a lot of poor people here, and you're not going to do well, right? You're all starving, you're all hungry, you're all in poverty and whatever. So he says, okay, let's figure this thing out. Everybody come to this banquet, right? We're going to come to this banquet and we're going to hash this thing out. We're going to figure out what it is we're going to do with you guys, right? So everybody shows up at this big banquet, this big giant building. Everybody goes into the building. Guards lock the doors. They set the building on fire and burn it to the ground, killing everybody, right? Problem solved. Now, how many times have you heard of something similar like that happening throughout history? Just saying. Right. It's a sad story, but it's not too far off from stories that you have heard throughout history. Now, they'll have all kinds of reasonings behind it. There'll be all kinds of political and social upheaval, all kinds of stuff that'll come around to it. But the bottom line is what? Too many worthless eaters. So if you're not being helpful and useful, if you're not being productive in this world, if you're not on the upper side of the wedge, what are you doing? You complain enough about it and they might just take care of you. All right. Lumber will save our lives. That's a bold statement. All right. Gary seems better, but I was there in the daytime. Would like to see how Gary looks at night. Ooh, Gary, Indiana. Yeah. All right, Pedro, restoring quality housing for renters is what I'm promoting. Vlad didn't like middle managers. Well, good luck with that all-nighter. Uphill battle, though. What do you think about Trump tariffs on Canadian lumber? Oh, you got to go back to the beginning of the video and watch it because I talked about that for like a half an hour. All our mills in BC are shutting down. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I have been describing and sharing with people for quite some time. See, now, as you're talking about your mills shutting down, literally due to the lack of demand for lumber, we got people here on our side of the border talking about how it's the mill curtailment or the tariffs on Canadian lumber that is driving the house prices or keeping house prices elevated here because we can't build homes on account of it. All this misinformation, like completely inaccurate stuff. What tariffs is his answer? Yeah. What tariffs, right? Like what tariffs on lumber? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah. There's been a duty on Canadian lumber even prior to Trump. Oh, yeah. It goes back to the 80s. People, like, I don't know how many people realize that lumber dispute literally goes back to the 80s and probably even before that. I don't know. But, that is like, it is such an old story within the lumber game that to try and rehash it out as something new is like, I don't know, useful propagandized information, I guess. All right, all-nighter, you need to move from AOL connection to fiber optics. Yui, what stock or ETF can I use to go long lumber? There's one called Wood. I mean, I'm not trying to promote any of these things, but Wood is a forestry and kind of forestry industry kind of ETF. But really, I would be, if you really want to do that, like my honest opinion would be to look at one of the mills or a group of the mills and see which one of those, like, I'm not trying to call out one particular mill, but for example, if you were to go with like Weyerhaeuser or Boise or somebody like that, and then just kind of follow those particular stocks. And I mean, honestly, that's like the only way I can think of to really go about it decently if you're going to go into a stock or an ETF is to go with one of those. Now, I took a chance on a leveraged ETF and did quite well with it. But that is not something that you want to go long. I mean, it is short to the point that people said that if you hold it more than a few days, you're crazy. Because it's 3 times leveraged. Now, you can find that one out there pretty easy if you just type in 3 times leveraged lumber ETF. Lumber and building suppliers. How about that? and you can find it on your own. I don't like promoting it because it is very dangerous. And I had quite a few people who came to me and say, dude, if you are promoting that or trying to sell that thing, and I'm like, I'm not. I'm not trying to sell it. I'm not trying to promote it. I was just telling people what I was doing. And although they told me I really didn't know what I was doing, I killed it in that thing. I just killed it with that stock, with that leverage ETF. I mean, I could not believe how well it did, how quickly I did it. I could have made more. I should have sold out earlier than when I did, but I did quite well with it, and I was very happy with my move on that. But then again, I'm not here to try and share stock trading information. That's not really what I do. I mean, there's plenty of YouTube channels out there and stock and investor guys who will tell you all about how it is you're supposed to read a company and look at the stock charts and all the other stuff that will give you really good insight on what it is that you need to do to be a stock trader. I'm not that dude, right? I'm more economic forces. I'm more like monetary policy. That's the kind of like I'm more into like the general view of things, not necessarily like how to make money while doing this. If you are smart, right, and you pay attention, then it becomes very obvious on where it is that you need to go to make money. Like for me, it was very easy to be in like that leveraged ETF at the moment that it was. I could just see it. It was very simple for me. The longer you're in the game, the easier it is for you to see these things. So, part of it is just practice and like being in it and being involved and learning the game. I looked it up. You are right. 280K is national average after finishes. I remember dial up. Remember when it got internet on the ship? Mid 90s, 96 maybe. I would not buy lumber stocks. I would prefer mining stocks because I see more appreciation in the coming years. And I would agree somewhat with that too. Like I would be more into buying mining stocks than I would be lumber stocks right now. Personally. Yeah. All right. Buying Hemo Depot back in 2013 was a good idea. I used to travel to the States for groceries, gas, clothing, and would travel vacations. I have stopped. What is going on here? Do I not have any? My battery is dying. Man, my phone is really... It gets out here in this cold weather. Oh no, it's... That's what's going on. Hold on here, guys. The cold weather just zaps my phone. I'll just stay up here. There we go. All right, let's see if that... Good Lord, guys. Me and my high-tech quality setup here with my cameras. There we go. All right. Let me try this again here. Nope, it's not going to work. Man, what's going on with my phone? My old ancient phone here. There we go. Okay. Back at it. Handle with care. Yes, Simon, your windshield is frozen. Yeah, isn't it? It is getting cold out here. And I can feel it like my toes are a little cold too. But I haven't started slurring my words yet. That's coming pretty soon though. I can feel it. All right. Good tenants equal pay rent on time. Don't trash the place. Report issues with the unit home as soon as possible. Many lumber mills, British Columbia, are shutting down, especially on the Vancouver Island. Yeah, and I've been trying to report on that for quite some time, the mill curtailments and shutdowns. It's not just in British Columbia, too. You got to understand, this is happening all over. Not just here in the Pacific Northwest up into Canada, but all the way across the entire nation, down into California, all the way out to, Georgia and what was it, North Carolina or something like that? I forget where all the different places, Florida. There was all kinds of mill curtailments and shutdowns. So this is entirely across two nations and all the way from border to, from coastline to coastline. So nobody is out of the realms of issues within this industry. Everybody's facing them right now, especially the hardwood industry. I just focus in on the softwood industries, right? Basic lumber. Hardwood industry is really devastated right now. Like I don't really know a whole lot as far as like the hardwood industry goes. We don't have like a lot of hardwood mills up in our area as much as the softwood mills. The softwood mill are the bigger, like bigger production. These are the guys who are producing like the insane amount of lumber that is for construction purposes. Hardwood is more for trim, cabinetry, flooring, different things like that, not necessarily for the actual construction purpose of things. But the hardwood industry had a huge export market where they would export a lot of the material to other nations out there. And that is like in shambles right now. At least with the softwood industry, we are a domestic consumer of the product. Like we export some of it, and there's a lot that, Canada exports to other nations. But for the most part, we consume our production of it, and then we buy some production coming from Canada. Right? But when it comes to hardwood, we were an exporter of that product. We consume a good chunk of it too, but it was the export market that we were really relying on, especially when it came to China. Those guys lost that market during this tariff trade war. And like you can't find enough domestic consumers to buy up that product. Once it's gone, it's gone. Like if you don't have that foreign buyer, it's over. And that's sad because there's nothing you can do to bring that back. You need that foreign buyer. In the softwood industry, you don't. Like the timber industry does, but not the lumber industry. And those are two different industries. Yeah? Like people think that they're the same thing. They're not, right? So you got timber, which is the tree. That can get sold over to a foreign buyer. The lumber can get sold to a foreign buyer too, but generally it's the raw log, right? Just the timber, the tree itself. It gets sold to a foreign buyer. The lumber that gets sawed up, we keep that. That's domestic. There is some that gets exported, but for the most part, we keep that production. So the tree itself is one product, and then after the tree is sawn, the lumber is a completely different product. So we may have like all the timber we need. That's fine. But if we don't have a foreign buyer of that timber, our forest industry, our loggers, those guys who are looking to sell that timber to other nations, they face devastating consequences because of that. It doesn't matter how much timber you produce here in the United States to consume. If you don't have that foreign buyer, you just lost a major buyer of your product. You're going to start depleting. Yeah. And that's an unfortunate case that we do face here today. Right? It's not so much as the product that they're making from it, it's the extra timber, right, that we're not consuming that there was a buyer for. It's just like an agricultural product like anything else, selling wheat or soybeans or anything else out there. Trees is another agricultural product. And if you don't have a buyer for that, then that particular industry starts getting hit, devastated by it pretty hard, even if you have a buyer for lumber. All right. Wait, I'm sorry. We pay the money to keep the prices higher. I'm not sure. Okay. Did you guys hear you could read through the redactions with Acrobat Pro? All right. I got guy on the island. I could get a report if you want. All right. Do you think copper is still a good indicator for the economy? Well, I mean, I don't think it's a bad indicator for the economy, but me personally, I don't know a whole lot of people who are in the copper industry. And so therefore, it just kind of leads me to what's happening within the news and then the price that I see. And since I know what I know about the lumber industry and the misinformation that comes out so much on the mainstream media about it, I don't know if I can really trust the information that I'm reading about copper when it comes to the mainstream media information anyway. So I do think it's a good indicator of demand for building. But when you see the copper prices moving up, that is certainly not a sign of the building demand that is happening. All right? It's not a sign of that because there's no like the building industry is not doing terribly well right now. So that I don't know if it's a good sign of necessarily of like what's happening within the economy. If you saw lumber demand moving up, most likely it's probably taken place because there's a demand for it due to the building industry. Right? Now, copper could be, a sign like the price going up because of all the technology, going into like, building robots or whatever. And I could see that being the case, but generally copper moves more on the idea of what it is that's happening within construction. Like, at least that's the idea that I have been told in the past. I don't know if there's any truth to that anymore, but at least that's kind of the idea that was taking place in the past, is that that would be the mover of copper, is the building industry, and the demand for it. But I can see where robotics and, the building of the data centers and all that other stuff could really demand a lot of copper as well. But then in my mind, that's still part of the construction industry, even if they are building data centers themselves, In nickel, I think you need to buy a ton at a time. Yes, copper and nickel are fantastic long-term investments. Home Depot in Canada. In Canada, lumber garage, it is the same in the U.S. Garage garbage? I don't know about that. See, this is what's funny about it, is that I've heard people say, oh man, the lumber is just absolute crap. I've seen it down there. And I'm like, you do realize there's grades of lumber. There's like standard and better. There's premium grades. There's like kiln dry. There's green. There's a lot of different types of lumber out there. And generally, the plants don't care what it is that you have purchased. They don't care if you bought a standard and better or if you bought a premium. So long as it's marked standard and better, that's the only thing that they're looking for. And it doesn't matter if you went and bought a premium board, right? It doesn't change anything about it. Now, it does change the quality of the product, but it doesn't matter when it comes to the inspection of it. So long as it's stamped number 2 and better, that's all they're looking for. Many yards will buy the absolute cheapest lumber so they can advertise the cheapest lumber that they can. Other yards, like us, we know that we're not going to be able to compete against the big box store. Their buying power is just too big. So we carry a superior product. When people come down and they look at our boards, they're like, man, how come you have such nice boards and they have crap? It's because they're buying the cheapest thing out there on the market they can get, right? And if it happens to be, crap utilities, like more into the utility grade, but it's stamped at number 2 and better, they really don't care. They'll buy it. That's the only thing they care about. Now, for us, we want a superior product to sell, because when people come down, they say, hey, man, I want a good quality 2x4. They don't have to go searching through the unit to find it. It's usually the unit is that good that they can find, what it is that they're needing just right, right on the top of the unit. And that's the difference inside of it. So when people say, oh man, there's this crap lumber, it was just like, that's not true. You're looking at crap lumber, which I would agree with. Yes, you are, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that there is crap lumber being produced in the United States. That's not true. We produce high quality lumber here, lots of it, if you purchase it. Right? But most people don't purchase that high quality lumber. They usually purchase shit lumber and try to sell it for the cheapest price. Because when you say, how much is a 2x4 standard and better, that's the only thing they care. They didn't ask if you carry a premium grade or not. They don't care what the condition is. They just want to know what the price is so they can figure out what their estimate on their wall is. All right, Southern Yellow Pine is premium and even kiln dried. AT will screw up and crawl like a snake to a lot next door. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like we don't deal with a whole lot of yellow pine up here in the Pacific Northwest. Almost everything is fir larch, right? And so Doug fir, for the most part, on a kiln dried board, it's like, that's like, you might find some warped boards or something like that, but at that point it's done. It doesn't really move anymore. And I would honestly say, like, the grade of the premium grades that we have brought in, because not always can we get a premium unit. Like, if they're available, we buy them, but not always are they available. And so, and that's another thing, like, people will say, oh man, there's this lumber yards, they're just full of this. And I'm like, yeah, they might be full of like cheap grade lumber, but they're not full of the premium grades, which is what we carry, because we have to carry a higher grade lumber, right? And we always have. That was we always carried a higher grade lumber. The availability of it is not nearly as prevalent as it once was. You have to think, like the big time home builders, they don't buy premium grade. They buy cheap grade. And so if they're the ones who are buying, then what is it the mills are going to produce? What it is that the people are buying. So this is what ends up being produced a lot of, and not necessarily the premium grades or the stuff that is less in demand, right? So they're gonna produce that cheaper grade, which is going to be very prevalent in the market. The higher grade stuff becomes very infrequent. So when people say, "Oh man, they just produce crap lumber," again, you have to look at where it is that you are viewing that lumber and what grade of lumber you're reviewing, and then how accessible is that premium grade to the yard that you are at. Is there other yards that carry a higher grade? Yes, sir. When steel production starts to move, money to be made. Yes, Moses, not only AI will affect third world countries, but will also affect countries like the US and Germany. When copper and nickel are solid investments. Holy hell, I see. Okay. If you were investing in properties, would you consider market like Gary, Indiana, or Detroit, Michigan? I would refer back to All Nighter. I mean, he's the one who's involved in that one right now, so he would have a much better insight in something like that. So I would ask All Nighter his opinion on that one. All right, home builder stocks are a good indicator of why lumber mills are shutting down. Yeah. Right? Again, like you only have to just look as far as the demand. If the demand for lumber was up, then you would not see the mill shutting down. That's all there is to it. But when you see the mill shutting down, it's because there's not a lot of demand for lumber. And when you see prices at $550 per thousand, it's certainly not the high-priced lumber that is keeping the builders from building homes. It's not that. It doesn't have anything to do with that. As much as the rich people want you to believe that, it's because they don't want you to believe that it's their own allocation of properties that is preventing you from being able to buy it, because they're rich buying into assets. That's the problem. Period. Right? There's nothing else that is doing it other than new money coming in and people who have first access to it buying the properties and separating them from everybody else. As much as we want it to be something else, it's not. As much as they want it to be something else, it's not. Right? All right, big fan of Doug Fir. It's, I mean, I can't imagine. I guess there's probably some other lumber out there, some other type of species of lumber that's as high quality, but Doug Fir is a pretty good stuff, man. I mean, it's super strong, long lasting. Yeah. Oh, silver to the moon. Gary, Indiana isn't that diversified neighborhood. Isn't that a diversified neighborhood? Oh, I see. Question mark. You guys have fun? 125 people watching, 73 likes. That's pretty good. You guys really enjoyed this one, I think. With the 73 likes and all, I really appreciate you all hitting that thumbs up button. If we have any more comments or questions, let's get those out. We're going to finish this live stream here in the next, 5-10 minutes or so. I'm starting to feel my toes are getting like to the point that, I can't feel them, I guess, but it's a little chilly out here. I can't see my breath though. It's not that cold. Can't be that cold if you don't see your breath. Yeah. Gary, Indiana chose me. All right. I'm pretty close to a ton of copper in my pole building. Wow. Been collecting it for 20 years. I have a bunch of aluminum ingots. I poured here at home, painted gold. Look cool stacked. Yeah, that is cool. Oh, and that is awesome. Yeah, if I had a bunch of aluminum ingots, I would do the exact same thing. Stack them up like gold bars. That's cool. All right. Gary, Indiana is very poor place. You can see Michael Jackson's house there, though. That's funny. Let me pull it back up here a little ways just to see if there's any. All right. News tomorrow, famous YouTuber found gone in his car due to hypothermia. Quasi-famous, right? Smoke that thumbs up like Cheech and Chong, please. Thank you, all-nighter. With high inflation expectations, wouldn't that demand higher rates of return? Higher rates would, in theory, cause hesitation in borrowing for investments in business expansions. For investment and business expansion. Well, I mean, I think the threat of higher rates or the threat of possible lower rates into the future could hesitate the expansion. But like, okay, here's an example. There was I forget where it was in the speech, one of the speeches we were reading from the Fed, in that they were referring to one of the contacts that they have as far as, or maybe a few of the contacts that they have within the corporate space, saying that they are holding back on hiring people because of the concern about what it is that's going on with tariffs. Like they don't want to hire people just to find a slowdown and then having to lay them off, but that they were in a position in which that they did want to hire people. And so now I think about that. That is like, holding back on expanding just simply because of the threat of tariff. So in somewhat of the same example of that, right? The idea of higher tariff rates, if you have a higher rate, then that would hesitate on borrowing money because you're going to pay a higher rate. Well, it would, especially if you think you can get a cheaper rate here in the future, then that may hesitate it, right? But in the same sense, if you are getting a return on capital investment that is then moving into the economy, and the economy is actually growing, like we, apparently at 4.3% or whatever it is, then you're going to want to take advantage of that. And the only way maybe to take advantage of it is by jumping into the elevated interest rates at that level in order to get the production going or whatever it is that you're doing for your expansion to make your operation work. So I guess there's like, a couple of ways to look at that as far as the hesitation goes. The fear of, elevated interest rates like causing a slowdown within the economy, or the lowering of interest rates going into the future and missing out on a better opportunity to get a lower interest rate. I can see where both those things could hesitate the economy. My buddy on Vancouver Island builds logging roads, can't get a day off. Okay. I mean, you can, I mean, I'm not trying to argue with you on this one. You might be in a very, Vancouver Island is probably one of the highest output producers for such a concentrated area in the entire world. Right? So to go up and say, oh, my buddy up here is just absolutely busy as hell. Well, he happens to be in one of the highest output areas in the entire world. But if you go and you look at the amount of mill curtailments and shutdowns that has taken place in that area, you're going to find devastating results. There's places up there right now that are shutting down so dramatically that they will not be returning. Now, is that happening in 100% of that area? Absolutely not. But it is definitely happening. And it's not only happening there, but it's happening all over this country as well. Is it happening at every mill? No. Right? Are there mills being set up and being built right now? Yes. Right? Is there operations that are going in full swing right now? Yes. Is there all the production in the world happening right now throughout this country? Absolutely not. Right? There is massive mill curtailments and shutdowns that I have been reporting on every single month for well over a year. Probably closer to 2 years now, a year and a half. Now, we can avoid it, ignore it, pretend like it isn't happening. We can say like, oh, dude, you just need to come to my area. Building is happening everywhere. That's great, man. We can open our eyes and take a view at what it is that we see right here, but we have to understand that it's not so much of what we are seeing, it's what is being planned for the future that we are missing. All right? Yeah, that project is being built. When that one's over, what's next? See, the material is already there. That building already has the lumber. It's already constructed. There's no demand for lumber going there. That thing is already built. The demand for lumber comes to the place that hasn't been built yet. Where's that? Are there projects starting? Absolutely. There has never been a time in history that the human race wasn't trying to put some sort of structure together. It will always be the case that humans are trying to build. It is in our nature. It is what we do. We are going to build going into the future. The amount of building we are doing, that is very relative. All right? You can go to a particular area and say, look, and I'm like, yeah, look here, this is wonderful. Then you can take a broad view of the entire system and pinpoint all the mill curtailments and shutdowns that are happening because of the lack of demand for lumber due to the slowdown in construction. Look at that. I'm not talking to like one particular view. You look through a little tiny scope, right? And you can see this thing. I'm talking looking at the entire picture of it. I'm in Japan right now. I see the dollar worth less than the British pound. It just makes me think my dollar is weaker, even though I know it's not. Well, I think that's relative to the Japanese yen, right? And so the dollar is going to get weaker over time just because of the nature of the fiat currency of it. But I think like a lot of times when we look at like the idea of de-dollar, like the dollar devaluation, I feel that a lot of times people misinterpret that into the prices. Like, oh man, lumber goes up, that's because of the dollar devaluation. And then when it goes back down to 550 per thousand, did the dollar all of a sudden get all its value back? Same thing with eggs. Oh, devaluing dollar, that causes eggs to go up. And then the eggs go back down to a normal price. And did the dollar get all its value back? It's just like, this doesn't make any sense. When I hear this argument, people who point at it and use this argument, and I'm like, man, this doesn't seem to work out very well. Now, understanding that the demand for dollar exists far outside of the United States and spans all over the globe, not all the rest of the currencies of the world have that same thing going on. Like, the yen gets used for international trade. So does the euro. So does renminbi, the yuan or whatever. Chinese currency. All these things get used for doing currency or doing trade, international trade. Like the dollar is not the sole only international trading currency. All the rest of the currencies out there can do it too. The only problem with those other currencies is that they don't even come remotely close to doing what the dollar is doing. Like the amount of transactions that the dollar performs, all the rest of the currencies combined couldn't do it. And so I laugh when people say, oh, they're going to get out of the dollar, and they're like, and get into what? Nothing, right? They're getting out of the dollar means not doing transactions. Like that would be getting out of the dollars is literally just sitting down and sitting on your hands and not doing anything, right? That would be getting out of the dollar. If you want to do business, you're going to have to do it in the dollar because there's nothing else to do business in. Even if you wanted to do it in another currency, there's not enough of it to do it with. So that demand for dollars can rise and fall pretty easy. Because it's not just what's happening here in the United States, it's the demand for dollars outside of the United States. How much dollar-denominated debt is written, and how much is there actually going to be paid back by some of these countries out there who have written that dollar-denominated debt? How many countries are going to be paying back China on the Silk Road Initiative as far as all their, infrastructure projects that they had lent to those nations in dollars? That demand for dollars can then fluctuate pretty high. I just don't believe that, the idea that devaluation of dollar can be observed inside of a price of something. I mean, everybody who points at it usually ends up having to eat their words because it never ends up working out that well. Lumber prices go up because of the money printer. Well, here it is back normal. Eggs go up because of the money printer. Back down to normal. Now what are you going to say? Right? It shoots up and back down, but still higher than where it started. But lumber didn't. Like, I was selling lumber back in 2018 for $4, like a 2x4 8 standing and better. I was selling for over $4 a piece. Today I sell them for $3.85. All right. I sold CDX plywood prior to the pandemic. I mean, it reached a high. It was very unreasonably high of $25. Ran up in the pandemic up to $80, and I had it at one point at $23.99. Right after the pandemic. So yeah, prices do shoot up, and then they do go back down. Now, are they going to come back down in everything? Well, if the supply would come back in a reasonable fashion, then it would. But most of the things that you found out there never really came back in a decent supply. Like the partnerships got severed. Most of the stuff that we consume comes from some sort of foreign production, right? And so once that was severed and shifted, it never went back to the way it was. The things that didn't get severed and shifted, like think about it, lumber is a domestic supply. There is no foreign production taking place here, right? Like we have foreign production that comes in that we consume, but the production of lumber within this country doesn't have foreign impact. It's our domestic material, our domestic labor, our domestic energy, our domestic rail systems, everything is domestic, right? And so if you don't have any foreign import, any foreign severing of partnerships, if you don't have to worry about any of that stuff, it came right back. Here it is. Lumber's at $550 per thousand, very reasonably compared to what it was back in 2018. The production of it was very reasonably, rebuilt after the COVID because of the short time that it was shut down. The longer it goes on, the more devastating of an event it is. Like trying to bring it back won't be as easy the longer it stays shut down. COVID was very brief. It was like through 2019 into early 2020. Well, now this is going on 2 years, and there's no real evidence of anything changing the current situation when it comes to production of lumber. It seems like it's going to be very depleted going into the future. All right. All right. Mosses have strong currencies. Does not mean it's good for the economy. Rough cut equals less tooling. I'm not an FX market expert either. They're supposed to work off supply and demand, though. Buy your lumber now, sticker it, get it while it's low. I work for Eel River Sawmills. See? Right here. This is somebody who knows the game. Get it while it's low. The powers that be are taking in information that is completely inaccurate. And that's unfortunate because they got guys like this. There's like Kevin O'Leary or, this Massachusetts governor. These are the people who are in charge of creating policies. They're the ones who are leading the way. They're the money people. They're the leadership we voted for, and they are literally thinking and looking at it inaccurately. So how is it that they could possibly be making a right decision? They can't. It's not even possible. Even if they wanted to, with all the information that they have right now, it would be impossible for them to make the right decision because they have not got the right information to begin with. Right? So people were like, what do we do about it? It was just like nothing. You can't change their people's belief, That's they're already there. They got that belief and they're going to run with it. So now we are subject to whatever it is that they are going to do with that belief system. We can't change their beliefs. Yeah. All right. So the devaluation of the dollar overseas keeps the United States people inside their country. I'm not sure what does that mean? I don't know what that means, man. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just misunderstanding the comment. All right, we need to bring back framing houses with rough cut lumber undried. I think it would make a quality house, but I doubt that'll happen. Health insurance, city, county, and state taxes. Buy silver, move out of the city. This is delusional. Dollar is dead. Yeah, I don't know about that. See, like when I used to have that same belief system, and so I took all my money and I bought into the silver game back in 2009, 10, going into 2011. It's only been in the last, few months that I've actually been in a position in which that silver is now worth more than what I had paid for it. The entire time, essentially, I had been sitting in a spot in which that silver was worth less than what I had paid for it until, like I said, until just recently. Now, I think I was able to dollar cost average it down a little bit further than maybe what I am suspecting of. But for the most part, I am only now in a position in which that it is doing fairly well for me. Had I been in the entire time moving into the Dow or real estate or something else, I would have been absolutely killing it right now comparatively to where I am in silver. Now, I'm not regretting the silver purchase. Many of you have heard me talk about the insurance policy or the insurance how I use it like an insurance to buy a car, save me from, basically losing out on everything in life by having that ability to buy a car with it. Greatest insurance policy in the entire globe is to have silver. But to think that I was going to be somehow like beating the devaluing or hyperinflation dollar crash scenario back in the great financial crisis by getting into silver was absolutely the incorrect move. Wrong mindset, wrong move, right? Put me in a position in which I ended up foreclosing on the house. I was deep into debt. Took me forever to recover from it. I held on to the silver, but it didn't until now, it really didn't do anything for me other than that one moment when I was able to buy the car. And I was thankful for having it back then. But I have come to a much different understanding of what it is to mean or what it means to me to think about a dollar being dead right now. Now, tomorrow I'm going to go to work. Tomorrow I'm going to get paid in dollars. Tomorrow I'm going to take those dollars and I'm going to use it to transfer into some other payment on my house, into some sort of bill payment, or into another asset because it's currency. It's not meant to hold value. It's meant to trade goods and services for other goods and services. The more I understood that, the more I realized I'm not going to be in dollars. I'm going to be in some sort of asset out there. But knowing that the dollar itself was not something that I truly wanted to be in, and that silver wasn't going to save the day. It's moving into something that is going to have a return. Dividend paying stocks, rental properties, businesses. Speculation is okay, but it's not going to ever make you any kind of money, right? It's the greater fool theory where you think you're going to sell it off to for a higher price to somebody else. And not saying that it won't happen. I'm just saying that wouldn't it be better if that silver was actually paying you rent for the money that you put into it? Like a property, or dividend paying stock or business or something like that. But you put that money into silver and then it sits on a shelf. It doesn't do anything except for sit around waiting for it to go up so you can sell it to somebody else. Hopefully sell it to somebody else. Not saying that's a bad move, but that's not 100% of what I'm doing. That was something I tried back in the day and I failed miserably doing it. Now, I'm in a decent position, okay position now comparatively to what I was before. And I am very thankful I have that silver, but I'm looking towards other things now. It collects dust. Weapons manufacturer stocks were easy money. Buying houses long term, Washington State versus Alaska. Thoughts? Me personally, I'd probably be Washington because I think that state is probably just going to explode with value property. I mean, you got to think all the West Coast, all the coastal properties, right? Because that's where the demand for real estate is. People want to be close to the ocean. I don't know why. Here it is. I've always lived next to the ocean, so I mean, I can't imagine living anywhere away from it. So it's really popular and it's very expensive. Washington seems to be one of those states that has a lot of people who want to live there, especially along the coastal part of things. Eastern Oregon and I'm sure Eastern Washington is probably very similar, but Eastern Oregon is incredibly conservative. I don't know how many people realize that, but it's the western part of the state that's very liberal, like Portland to the coast. the eastern part of the state is incredibly conservative over on that side of things. So it's a very different mindset. Now, when we think about what it is that's going on over in the eastern part, ranches and, farm and kind of cattle kind of thing going on there, very much like what you would expect over from the Portland going to the coast. What do you have? Lots of new money, retirement, techie people. I don't know what do you want to describe them as, but generally, like the general. Okay, for example, Astoria used to be loggers and fishermen. That was the main source of income for our area around here, was logging and fishing. People who then made money off of the residual of that. Well, now we got a huge hospital district, remote workers, and retirement. These are the people who bring in the new money. The prices of the homes are quite expensive on account of that, right? So it's the change in that demographics there that happen. And I can only assume that, as time goes on, these things are going to continue, right? Like, I can't imagine logging and fishing coming back to Astoria. But I do imagine like tourist industry, more hospital, more retirement, stuff like that happening, which is going to put like the logger and fisherman less competitive and less competitive as this new money is now, coming into these other areas. Silver at 72.27. My goodness. Yeah, I'm buying silver. All right. Anyone that has silver and gold now, do not sell it, because there will be more appreciation due to the fiscal condition of the country now. Right now, how much can you invest in old people for about to die? Doesn't seem like a profitable future. West Coast commercial property buildings has been falling hard, I think. They have been, right? People are leaving those areas. But it's what's crazy about that is I totally see that happening where, like, businesses in Portland and stuff like that are literally shutting up shop because of like how horrible the conditions are. But the unfortunate thing about it is that they're moving out to like the rural areas, right? So they're leaving that and they're coming out to our area, kind of sort of things. They're spreading themselves out. Maybe not so much the business, but the people who are in those businesses. You know what I mean? Getting out and away from those things and moving out to like our coastal areas and stuff like that. It's sad to see it. Like, I would love for there to be an answer to deal with all this stuff. But it's not really like trying to figure out how to deal with it. I watch a guy who does like a lot of like the homeless videos in Portland and stuff. And I guess he's really popular even amongst like maybe some of the city officials and stuff like that. And never once have I ever really seen anybody or ever heard anybody address the issue that was being faced. All the interviews, all the talking, all the accusations, all the images, all the other stuff, and yet never once ever does it get to the heart of the problem. Ever. Because they literally don't know what the heart of the problem is. The drug use, liberal politics. They come up with all these things. And then, like, one dude off in the back, it says, do you ever think that maybe it's because of the area and the massive amounts of new money that pours into the system that's separating the rich from the poor? It's making it ever increasingly more difficult on these people. And then when you have a depressive situation you are in and the drugs are so prevalent, what do you think is going to end up happening? They're probably going to end up doing a lot of drugs. The Pacific Northwest has always been a very depressed area. Lots of drinking, lots of drug use and stuff like that. And I don't know if it's because it's always cloudy and rainy here, but that might have a little something to do with it. But it's always been quite prevalent. If you put the condition in such a way that it makes it almost hopeless for people, like their regular average day job is not going to be enough to actually make it here, then what's going to end up happening? You're going to fall into depression. And, if you can't figure out what to do about it, then most likely you're probably just going to, numb yourself with the, the drugs and alcohol that are out there so you don't have to think about it anymore. Now, I'm not trying to give excuses for anybody's behavior or anything else out there, but when I see people thinking, oh man, what is it that we can do? And I'm like, I don't know. What is it you're going to do? What is it you're going to do? Are you gonna keep going for that new money? You're gonna enjoy your luxurious life and then wonder what it is that's causing this homelessness? What are you gonna do? Yeah, like I mean, I see what's happening here, and I know that there's nothing you can do to change it, but you want to do something, so let's see. Your luxurious life is probably one of the things you should start with, but you don't want to give that part up, right? Like you want to be able to live in your house and drive your new car and eat the nice food and do all the other stuff and deal with the problem at the same time. Good luck. Right? Good luck with that. I avoid alcohol and drugs, but stick to my Tylenol and coffee. Yeah, I'm a coffee addict myself. All right. Technology equals less people and space needed. A few carpenters I've talked to say they like to cut boards same day and then use them for framing. They told me drying the lumber is not necessary for structural integrity. No, it's not. In fact, green lumber was the more prevalent one when I was a kid. Like everybody framed with green lumber and then let the lumber dry out. The only problem is that you have to let that lumber dry. Right? So if you're doing new construction, you're building here in the Pacific Northwest and you are using green lumber, you're going to have to let that house cook for some time to get that moisture out of the walls, because you're about ready to cover it up with drywall and everything else. And if you don't want mold issues, then you have to cook that house, which means you have to put some heaters going on in there for a couple of, for a while it tries to zap a lot of that moisture out of the walls before you get started. In southern parts of the country, I cannot imagine that being a problem. Like, I just don't think that that would be any kind of issue whatsoever. But here in the Pacific Northwest, where it rains 9 months out of the year, it is a problem. And so framing with green, not a problem. In fact, to me, it's just fine. In fact, it's easier because you can drive nails through it without actually splitting the boards. Doug fir is split so bad. Kiln dried Doug fir, like it seems like I can't drive a nail in without splitting it. It's not true. I mean, you can definitely drive, but it has its issues with it. Green, so much easier. It just drives and as far as driving nails into it, it's just so much cleaner and easier and faster. But that's very minimal. You only drink coffee when it's dark outside. If so, that may explain the coffee increase. I only drink coffee when it's dark or light outside. Those are the only two times. Other than that, I don't drink coffee. It's only when it's dark or light outside do I drink coffee. All right. Does the green lumber shrink some? It can, yeah. I mean, it can, and it can warp, and it can twist, and it can crack, and it can do some things like that, but it doesn't do a lot. Like, not so much that it's like, oh my God, all the boards shrink, now the whole thing's out of whack. Not like that, yeah. But it can have some issues, like some warping and twisting and splitting, yeah. But like once you kind of generally got it all hammered together, pinned together, sheeted, it's usually you don't have any issues. July green lumber is my favorite. Can the top 20% keep luxury spending? Keep luxury spending? Yeah, well, that's what they do. They're just living their normal life. They don't think like, oh, we're gonna go out and be luxurious today. Like, they just live their life. They're just living their life like normal, not realizing that they have a very luxurious experience comparatively to everybody else. They just think that they're just doing things normal. But yeah, that's essentially, they don't know any different. Old framing tip is to hit the tip of the nail with the hammer blunt and the punch through the lumber rather than splitted lumber. Yeah, that's absolutely true. But generally, you're not going to be able to dull the tip of the nail when you're shooting nail guns, but you know that too. So, all right. so they only protect themselves. Can the top 20% keep luxury spending so they only protect themselves? I don't know if that's necessarily like a game plan within the idea of the top 20%. I don't even think they understand what it is that's happening. In fact, I'm pretty sure nobody really does, you know? And and that's what I find so amusing about this is like, man, how is it that some dude in a 97 Suburban is sitting there just like, breaking this stuff down to this point and level that I am? But I do so much research and do so much communication with people and doing like when I read or hear somebody make a comment on something, I will research and think about that particular comment so that I have an argument against it, right? Or for it or whatever it is that happens to be out there. So it really doesn't matter now at this point, like what it is that people are saying could be done. I don't, I, that's a great debate and that's really awesome. But unless you are addressing the issues with the Cantillon effect and the new money pouring in, I don't know what it is that they think that they can do. So if they don't address the Cantillon effect and the new money pouring in and the separation between the rich and the poor and how that actually is working, then there's nothing that can solve the problem because they're not addressing it. I don't even know if they know to. I don't even know if they know that's what's happening. If you don't recognize it, then you're going to find a reason. You're going to blame something out there and you're going to probably hit the thing that is frustrating you the most. And then you'll blame that. Very much like, like the girl we were listening to earlier, blaming the liberal politics or whatever it was that was happening in California. I loved it. She was like, wasting my money, my parents' money, all the hardworking tax money of all the hardworking people in California. I'm thinking money, 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 money. You ever think of that? Maybe it's all that money that's separating the rich from the poor. And now you have this massive homeless crisis that's taken place. Every time I hear somebody saying, well, maybe if we just throw a little bit more money at it, what? You don't think the problem will get worse if you just throw a little bit more money at it? Here, throw some more money at it. Let's see what happens. Oh, I got worse again. Dang. Huh. Ew. All right. Luxuries is fishing all day and night, every day and night. I like the freedom and security. I can care less about luxury. Well, I I mean, I love the luxurious experience. I do. The times I've got to enjoy, nice food, and nice hotels, and, traveling around doing nice things and fun things. Like, I enjoy the luxurious experience of it. But I think the difference behind it is like, do I sacrifice my ability to acquire assets so that I can enjoy the luxurious experience? Absolutely not. Right? I cut back on my necessities as much as I possibly can to live as meagerly as I think I can with and still enjoy my life while I'm able to acquire assets. If I couldn't acquire assets, I would have to cut back even more on my life. Yeah. Could I dive into more? Yeah, I could go buy a new truck right now if I wanted to, and I'd be driving around a new truck and I feel really good about it, and people wouldn't be teasing me about the 97 Suburban. And that would be a whole different type of experience. But I don't mind it. I take the laughing at the Suburban as a badge of honor, knowing that those people probably are not acquiring the assets in their life to get them on the other side of the wedge. So every time I see a comment like that, I'm like, there's my competition. Right? There's the people who are not doing it. And if you're not doing it and somebody is, what do you think those people are going to be like in the future comparatively to you? I know, it's sad. It sucks. I wish the day job was enough. I really do. I wish blue collar day jobs were enough for people, but it's going to get worse going into the future, and they're going to be begging for somebody to do something about it instead of figuring it out for themselves ahead of time so that they can position themselves accordingly for it. And that's really where I find the frustration starting to come for a lot of people. Even if you're, doing quite well, you're looking at all this homeless going, oh man, what's going on here? How come they're doing so horrible? This has something to do with somebody out there creating this situation. Maybe if we just throw some more money at it. Inequality is only the separation between the connection between people. The united religious people would be better off. Jesus was a carpenter. Yeah, he was. Does the bourbon have barn doors? It does. Because I had to think about it for a second because my Tahoe had a lift gate to it. Yeah. Do you think the answer to Cantillon effect is kindness? Actually, everybody equally helping each other from the goodness of their hearts instead of the wicked evil through 3D ways of self-reward? Well, that sounds like a beautiful idea, except that it doesn't sound like human nature, right? I mean, it sounds like a human would do that, but it doesn't sound like human will do that. You know, I mean, here's the thing. If you spent 5 years busting your ass so that you could buy a new car, wouldn't you do it? I mean, wouldn't you do it? If you worked really hard, like you walked to work every single day for 5 years straight so that you could buy a car outright without having to take any payments or do anything like that to be able to do that, wouldn't you do it? That's what, I mean, it's not unreasonable to think that you should work hard and then be rewarded for your hard work. Now, how about you go to work every single day walking, and then one day you have enough to buy a car, but you don't. And instead, you go down and buy a bus pass, not only for you, but then for your neighbors as well, because you're being kind. And now there is no separation between any of us. We all get to work together at the same time in the same way. And it's all because of your kindness. Wasn't that nice of you? Now, meanwhile, while you're spreading your kindness around, helping your neighbors out, which is very, very beautiful of you to do, there's another neighbor over there who's like, I want the new truck. And he goes and buys that new truck. And now he is sitting in a new truck, driving that to work every single day, which gives him a luxurious experience while you're riding the bus every day trying to be kind. Because you went and gave your money to everybody else to have a bus ticket as well. You see how this doesn't work out? Now you got a separation. You got all these people who are riding the bus and one dude is driving a truck. People don't act that way. People want to enjoy their experience. They want to work hard and then get that luxurious experience from the hard work. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't work hard. They don't want to work hard so that they can buy a bus ticket for their neighbor. Unless they're trying to get rid of their neighbor and buying a bus ticket out of there. But what I'm saying is that they don't work hard so that their neighbor can succeed. They work hard so they can succeed. And now, if they were very successful at what they are doing, and they are able to position themselves to be in abundance, now they can take that position of abundance and then reward who it is that they feel is most worthy of their sharing of their abundance. Now, that right there can work. You figure out how it is that you bust a move, how it is that you can position yourself, how it is that you can get a secure rate of interest beyond that of your occupation, and you position yourself in a way that you can now help and benefit other people. Because forcing other people to behave appropriately will never happen. Never in a million years. We can all sit around and hold hands and promise each other that we're all going to behave and not do it and, make all these promises. And then there'll be a handful of those people who will totally take advantage of that. And then they will separate themselves even more away from everybody else. Because that's just human. Like, I remember, it's kind of like the idea, I've shared this analogy before. I watched this, it was a short video and it was kind of comical. It was these lions coming out to eat or something, and there was this pile of chicken. And it was like all these chicken parts. So it was like legs and like, breasts and like whatever. And it was just a big pile of chicken there. Right? And these like 3 big lions come out, and like one of them just like pounces on this pile of chicken and was like guarding it like it's mine. But it's all in pieces. And so there's no way he can hold on to it because it's just all these little pieces and stuff. And so like the other lions are just grabbing it. And he's like, it's all mine, right? And that's exactly the way I feel that we as humans should be. Take it all. Take it all for yourself and then divvy it out to who it is that you feel is most worthy of it. Because if you don't do that, somebody else will. And then you'll never have your opportunity at it. When you see the abundance, go for it. Go for as much as you can. Take it all. All right? And once you have it, then you can figure out what it is that you need to do to spread that wealth for other people who are most deserving of it. Commercial fishermen really get this idea. Like, I have never seen, like, when the it's funny. It's unlike any, maybe, I don't know, maybe other people get this thing, but when commercial fishermen, when the fishermen are in it and the fish are running and you're pulling and you're getting as much as you can, it's like this, it's like almost like you're possessed. More, take it all, more of them. Look at it, it's more, and just get it all, And then once you get it in, it's like, man, we got the boat loaded, it's sinking, man, so happy and excited, and man, what an awesomeness, right? And then after, you can divvy out and be the rewards of it. But while you're in it, you get as much as you can. Well, to think like, oh man, I'm just gonna, I'm not gonna be that greedy. I'm gonna share and let, somebody else have a shot at it too. It was like, hell no. Right? Why? You got the shot at it. It's yours. It's your shot. Take it all. Divvy it out if you feel it's appropriate. Because if you don't, somebody else will, and then you'll be left behind. All right. We should learn from the animals. They only take what they can eat. Yeah, but they would take a lot more if they could. All right. And that's not true. Like, some animals will store for future use, right? Squirrels pack away nuts. We should learn from the people that have described the system and made effort to tell us. There you go, Justin. I appreciate that. I don't know. The squirrels in my backyard get plenty, and it seems like they just keep taking more. Well, if you give them a position in which that they don't have to rely on storing it because you've essentially enabled them with feeders and whatever. I'm not saying you personally, but if that was the case, then yeah, why would they store it? They don't need to. They've literally been conditioned not to. Sound familiar? Kind of like the people who were conditioned not to be responsible for their own finances and stuff. I don't know how that happened. There was a time in this country where people were very aware of it, and then they lost the awareness of it. Literally got it conditioned out of them to not be paying attention to what interest rate means. All right. And animals that do cooperate have very hierarchical structures. Because, or easy credit. The spirit needs more learning knowledge above greed. Well, I mean, I agree that there's a lot that needs to happen for the human race to be a better human race, but then there's also the understanding that we are left with primitive instinctual behaviors. And to deny those exist is very how should I put it, is very dangerous. Because the natural primitive instinct of a human being is very greedy, very selfish, right? It's almost very evil in intent. And to know that that exists deep down inside just about every single person because it's an instinctual quality of survival, then it's still going to exist today, even if we try to stop it from happening. Right? You can say, hey, don't behave like a human. That would be great, right? I mean, it would be awesome if humans didn't behave like humans, but they do. And it's usually left over probably because of that, primitive instinctual thought of survival. Got to take the abundance, may not be any later. Greed is a sin. Well, I guess if you give it that meaning, and then if you take it to a certain level, I think a certain amount of greed is good. I honestly do. Like overwhelming greed is not, but a certain amount of it is. If you didn't have a greed, then you wouldn't go for mass abundance. You wouldn't be able to position yourself in a way that then takes care of your family in the most awesome way, right? Greed has a little bit to do with it. Now, being like overly greedy, that's very damaging and I think very sinful in that sense. But I don't think like having a little bit of greed is a bad thing. It's like having a certain healthy level of narcissism is just kind of like being just confident, right? It's somewhat of the same thing. It's like a healthy level of narcissism is just essentially being confident. It's like, having a healthy level of greed is good. It gives you abundance for your family. I live in Minnesota in a town that is ground zero for the BS. It's finally getting attention into it, but the money flow to the ones who taketh is still flowing. Now this sucks to see happen. Well, if you don't take a active position in order to keep the money and then keep the money flowing to you, then you're going to lose it. You will be poor and it'll go to the rich. From day one, people have to think, what do I do to take my money to a spot that will then have a return? That right there is very difficult. People will think, well, I don't know. Maybe I'll go down to the bar and drink some beers and think about it. Right? And then spend that money. That's where I think it's funny, is like they don't know what to do with it, so they just blow it on something that's going to have absolutely zero benefit to their life. Man, I wish things were so different. All these rich, greedy people out there, how come we never have a chance? You guys want to go down to the bar? Right? Like, this is literally how a lot of conversations end up going, is something very similar to that. And, what are you going to do? A true man rises above his instincts, nurtures his spirit, and you will never be left behind if you follow that. Yeah, I would agree that, you could recognize some of the maybe like instinctual behaviors that you might have, like greed, lust, envy, all the other things that people say, hey, don't have those feelings, don't think like that. To be able to recognize them and understand why it is that you have those feelings and what it is that's actually taking place. Now, again, if we just kind of go back to the greedy kind of thing, a lot of times you will find people are greedy because they are literally in a survival mode. Like, I gotta get it. If I don't get it, I'm gonna fail. And they're stuck in the survival mode, and that's literally turned them into a greed. So to recognize that as the meaning behind it is very different from somebody who says, oh man, I just want to see those people fail. That's a whole different mindset, right? That's not even the same thing. Somebody who's worried about losing everything they have, as opposed to seeing somebody else who says, no, I just really like destroying lives. Right? Totally different type of mindset. There are both people out there in the world. And you can say, well, it's okay to be that one, but not that one. Oh, come on, man. The system is designed to keep you in survival mode. Absolutely not. It's not designed to do that. You have allowed it to be that way. Survival mode is literally in your own head. That has nothing to do with the system. Nothing to do with the system. Has everything to do with you. Everything is in mass abundance all the time, everywhere. There's never been a time that there was never an abundance. However, most people can't see it and don't feel it. And since they don't feel it or see it, they end up putting themselves in what it is that they do feel and see, which is lacking survival mode. I know. I lived there for the longest time. I proved it to myself for years. That's exactly what was happening. The moment that I figured out that I could switch that mindset into that of an abundance mindset that says, man, it would be really cool to have a life where I can at least pay my bills on time regularly and then earn some extra money so that I can move that towards assets, and then realize there is that life that exists out there. And everybody can do it if they have a belief in that there is an availability of an abundance out there. If they don't think it's out there, then there's no way they can get it. A system is designed to keep you in lacking. Absolutely incorrect. This system has so much abundance provided to the people that they just choose not to go for. It is sad. It is like the most abundant way of actually acquiring things that anybody had ever possibly seen. There is no better been more opportunities now than ever. Right? But if you believe that the system was designed to make you fail, that's exactly what will happen. I know. I used to study the New World Order and globalist, agenda and all kinds of stuff. And I could tell you exactly how it was that the globalist governance, the global governance of the world was going to keep you in poverty-stricken conditions for the entirety of your life. I had proved it to myself, and I was proving it to other people as well. And then one day I looked at myself and said, dude, what are you doing? Is that the life you want to live? Is this really honestly the way you want to be? Did you ever think that maybe, just maybe, there are people out there who are killing it in today's economy, doing exactly the things that, you say are impossible in a system that is designed to keep them from making it? There are people out there who are doing it right now, despite of all that, in spite of all of it. Okay. Maybe I can be one of those people. Huh. Sure enough. Right? I'm not necessarily killing it in every way, but I really enjoyed the experience of being able to pay my bills on time, which is something that I have never been able to do before. And that's the difference inside of it. It comes down to your own mindset. You're imprisoning yourself when you do that. If you literally believe that the system was designed to keep you enslaved and trapped and keep you in lacking, that's exactly what it will do to you. Guaranteed, zero chance of anything else happening. All right. Arguably, our system is designed to keep us alive, mostly at least where it is profitable. Well, I mean, that's that's really the truth right there, right? It's designed to keep you alive for profit. Recommend a Cook Island trust. Keep your money away from the U.S. jurisdictions. Save my friend from a surgery malpractice. I accept the system over the alternative. Take a chance on 1.7 billion anyone. A victim mentality brings you the worst outcomes. An abundant mentality brings you opportunities you wouldn't imagine. I'm proof of that. Scarcity mindset keeps you away from the money. Yeah, David, I can't, what is it? David's auto production. I'm not sure what. Thank you very much for the comment. And I agree. That was me too. Like I was very much in the mindset of lacking and in depression and the feeling that, there was forces that were beyond my control that was keeping me in the state that I was in. And I could prove it too. Like I could just like go through all these documents and areas and look at this, look what this guy says, and blah, blah, all right. All of it was inaccurate. None of it was true. I mean, there's some truth to it, but it wasn't true. It wasn't true for me. The only person who was keeping me down was me. Literally, that was it. There was no force. There wasn't a team of people out there going, hey, let's open up Simon's file and see how it is that we can keep him from succeeding. That wasn't happening. The only file that was being opened up to keep me from succeeding was the one in my head. Right? That was it. I should have been opening up that file and looking through all the possibilities, but instead I kept that thing shut. Saying, no, there's other things out there that are keeping me from succeeding. It certainly isn't me, though. The alternative to the double coincidence of wants ain't pretty. Oh, there that one went. Okay. But you know what I do think? They could stop printing money now. We have enough in circulation. But we don't. If you turn off the new money, everybody starts falling into pain and misery. And I understand that you think that there's enough new money already in the system. It's not a matter of the money that's in the system. It's ever increasing amounts of new money that is pouring into the system. Because if you don't have ever increasing amounts of new money that pours into the system, you're going to have a major divide already happening, but will end up taking place is that no new money is going to end up going down to the lower end of it. It's going to get concentrated, whatever's left, to the top portion of people. Everybody is going to be suffering in pain and misery as those people will slowly start losing their money and fall into poverty themselves. That's what's going to end up happening. The concentration of wealth up to the top, everybody is going to be suffering as those people will slowly fall into poverty themselves. That's what will happen if they turn the new money off. I'm down for it. I hope they do. I hope they turn the new money off tomorrow. All right? Let's do it, man. Let's get it on. It's going to be so devastating for the people out there. They are not going to know how to handle that. And there is certainly no way in the world that it would not create more inequality. It would, in fact, it would send inequality onto a hyper overdrive, as literally all the money would get concentrated to the handful of people at the very top with nothing for the people at the bottom. Right? And then those people would slowly fall into poverty themselves. Not even slowly, it probably happened quickly. You know? And I'm down for it. Let's make it happen. Let's do it. Let's turn the money printer off. Let's end it. Let's let the currencies collapse into the abyss, and let's find ourselves on a whole new monetary system based off of gold, silver, and cryptocurrencies. I'm down for it. But I am not believing that's going to happen. And if it did, it would be quite devastating for a lot of people out there. Not me. Like, I think I'll do quite well. In fact, I think I would do better in that environment than I would do in this environment. Right? I mean, I really honestly do. I think I would do much better in a gold standard hard currency environment than I would in this one. But I would not want to go into that environment considering how many people are so dependent on this one. Yeah. But either way, whatever, I'll take it. I'll go, whatever you want to do. All right. Saver like myself would be like a kid in a candy store. Right? What's wrong with creating the gold machine? Nothing. They have the gold machine now. Right? They're using the gold machine right now. Compound interest is the root of all evil. Ooh, bummer to hear that. Yeah, that's the unfortunate circumstances of understanding the system above everybody else, is that the compounding interest is definitely how it is that the richest man in Babylon became the richest man. Securing a rate of interest beyond that of their occupation is by far, the easiest way, and the only way, really, to live independently. Otherwise, you're going to have a job working for somebody else. Everybody, including your boss. Right? Think about that. That is so strange of a concept. But if you do not have an ability to secure a rate of interest beyond that of your occupation, you are literally signing yourself up for slavery. It's not evil. It may feel evil, it may seem evil, but it is very much a natural human consequence of economics. You want me to spend I worked to acquire money. I spent my time, my effort, and now I have this. You want to borrow it and then not pay me a return? Like, no, then you don't get to borrow it. Like, if you want to rent my money, I want to get a return off of it. And if you're telling me that's evil, then don't borrow it. Right? Then don't. Go work hard for yourself and go get yourself. Other than that, I'm keeping my money. And then you can be without. But if you have a good idea and you want to start a business and you want to borrow money to do it, and I like that idea that you have, and I want to get a little return off of it, don't you think this is symbiotic? Right? I mean, you got a good idea and I got the money. Why don't we bring these two together? We can bring your idea into fruition and I can get a return on my capital. Sounds like a good plan. I don't know why there's a problem here, but seems to be evil. Greed, manipulation. I don't get it. I don't know why. Maybe, well, then don't start your business. I don't care. I'll go find somebody else. All right, Simon, you act like they're giving all that money to the poor when they're print if they don't. I'm not acting like that. I'm trying to describe what would happen if they turn the new money off. Do you honestly think if they turn the new money off that the poor are going to have access to anything? I mean, just think, I mean, do you honestly think that the poor would have access to anything if they turn the new money off? I mean, if there's already a concentration of money happening, do you think that concentration of money would become unconcentrated, would be spread out more with the lessening of the money issuance? Like if they created less money, do you think that concentration wouldn't be concentrated, it would spread out, or do you think it would concentrate even more if there was less of it? I mean, just think about it like that. If they produce less currency, do you think that would unconcentrate it? Right? No, it would concentrate it more. Do you see the way Einstein dressed and did his hair? He kind of limited his options. Yeah, I don't think he really cared about options out there. I think the only thing he cared about was just answering his own questions. All right. Think it through is priceless like gold. You should not need to invoke religion to understand the money printing is immoral. Well, what if we lived in a state in which that we were getting our money in from manufacturing and then the manufacturing left and we didn't have access to new money anymore, and the people started falling into desperation, depression, all these horrible circumstances because that higher standard of living that sent the manufacturing, it's not coming back, and that equilibrium doesn't allow for any more expansion to really happen. So you're limited, and that's as far as it's going to go. Right? So that's okay for people who are accustomed to it or maybe kind of grew up into it. Now, if you're sitting in a situation in which that you had no hope of being able to expand beyond what it is that you have, why would you try? Right? You won't. You're essentially just going to give up. Now, here in the United States, when we were sitting in a position in which that we had lost our manufacturing base, like we still had manufacturers, but we weren't going to have enough manufacturing to bring in new money. So it's going to get turned off. If you had a silver mine bringing in the new money and it got turned off, the same results would happen. Okay? Whether it's coming from manufacturing and producing stuff and sending it out there to the world and the world sending you their money, or you're going to a silver mine and pulling it out of the mine, the results are the same. It's the new money that comes in. If you sever that and turn it off, what's going to end up happening? All right? If that new money doesn't pour into the system, what's going to end up taking place? So it doesn't matter if it was naturally coming from a silver mine, it was coming from manufacturing of goods and services, or it was coming from the printing off of a printing press. It's the fact that new money was coming in. The results are going to end up being the same. Elevated standard of living. Now, hey, it's great when we were a silver mine, getting that money from the silver mine and then increasing our standard of living by having direct access to the silver. That's a great way of going about it. We can buy the production of foreigners. We can spread that money throughout ourselves. Manufacturing goods and services to sell to the foreigners, that's the best way of doing it. It is by this way that the country grows most powerful, right? Producing and selling stuff that you manufacture. By far the best way to, have a strong economy. But then you can also bring in new money straight off the printing press. Ultimately, the same thing is going to happen to the people. Elevated standard of living. Now, unfortunate, if you cut any one of those off, whether it's the silver mine, the manufacturing, or the printing press, the results are the same. Right? Everybody falls into pain and misery as the new money turns off and the flow of foreign production that had that high standard of living ceases to exist, and you don't have the manufacturing base to provide the goods and services to the people, they're falling into poverty and misery. So again, it doesn't matter if it comes from the silver mine, the production of manufactured goods and services, or from the printing press. You turn that new money off, everybody's falling into pain and misery. All right. I don't care if it's unconcentrated or more concentrated. It would be a more honest system, which is all man could ask for. Good luck, deplorable. Good luck with your hopes and dreams and wishes, right? I mean, I understand that it would be a better system. Like, there's a million things that would be better. It'd be better if everybody kept their promises too, but they won't, and they don't, and it won't gonna happen. And yeah, you can imagine a better system that would exist out there, but you got this system to deal with. And if you think that you can change it, go for it, man. I mean, who's stopping you from trying to change the system? I'm telling you that it's probably not going to happen. I don't know who it is that you can talk to change how it is that people are conducting themselves, but most likely they're going to get up and do what they did yesterday, again, doing it tomorrow. Right? So I don't like, yeah, we can wish and hope and dream and pray all day long that they'll change the way that things are being done. That ain't going to happen, man. We have to look at the way things are, the way things are going, and how it is that we conduct ourselves in accordance to that. Because we can't change it. The system is screwed up. I agree. The K economy, rich and poor, wedge-driven, Cantillon effect, all that stuff, it sucks, man. But to think that it was done by design means that you can actually vote for somebody who's going to change it. And that's not going to happen because this thing isn't designed. It's manifested into the condition it is in. Knowing how it happened. Right? We were a manufacturing powerhouse. We should have fallen into pain and misery back in the 70s. When we severed ourselves from the gold standard, that was the equilibrium that Cantillon had talked about. That gold should have been sent back out there to the rest of the world. That was the natural course of things. You rise as a superpower, concentrate all the gold and the power to yourself. Once you have risen and you have that higher standard of living, foreign production comes in and you relinquish all the gold out there for the foreign production. It's the same thing that happened over and over. It wasn't a system, it was just the way it worked, right? It was the natural way of money flowing. Those people over there were super industrious. The money flew towards them, right? They raised their standard of living, started buying foreign production, and the money left them. And it went to someplace else, and this is the way that it worked. And it wasn't like super elitist out there trying to think, well, how do we get the power to go to those industrious people and then we'll redistribute it out to those ones? No, it was just a natural course of things. It was just happening, right? Were there people who recognized it at the time and manipulated the course of events in order to then profit the most off of it? Absolutely they did. But you have to understand it was the rise of the industrious people first. They started rising in industriousness, became more productive, started getting the new money in, and then people came in to govern that and took advantage of the situation because they recognized what was happening. You can say it all day long, that was designed, but then again, they didn't design you to be industrious. Right? You rose as an industrious person and they took advantage of it. You said it yourself, that's not the way the country works. Now what we need to do is print money, give it to the poor, and give it to the missile manufacturers and demand other countries give goods. I don't know where you're going with deplorable, but it sounds very made up. All right. It's true. Today's data said our trade deficit shrank a lot. Maybe we are becoming producers again. No, we already are producers. It's not a matter of being a producer or being a producer again. We were like one of the biggest manufacturers in the entire world of stuff. The problem that we face is that we buy more than we produce. We import more than we export. That's the problem we face. If you are importing more than you export, you're importing stuff and exporting money. That's Triffin's dilemma. How is it, as a custodian of the world reserve currency, that we get that money out there to the world? You have to run trade deficits. This is something that they recognized back in the 60s. Right? Without running trade deficits, what ends up happening is that you don't have enough dollars out there to meet the world demand for dollars, and the dollar starts to strengthen and it destroys your exports that you do have. Sounds very backwards, doesn't it? But that's the case. If you do not have enough dollars out there in the globe, to meet the demand for dollar-denominated debt and doing transactions and everything else, then what ends up happening is the dollar starts to strengthen. If the dollar strengthens, then your exports that you do have, the few of them that you are exporting out there to the rest of the foreign buyers, it ends up becoming less because that dollar is strengthening. They can buy less from you. Seems weird, right? You think they would be able to buy more, but they can't. They buy less as the dollar strengthens. Their currency, they can't swap out as much of their currency for the dollar, so they're not able to buy as much stuff from you. If your dollar weakens, then you can export a lot more stuff. So part of the idea of the United States is to import stuff and export money. Get that money out there to the globe. Best way to do it is running trade deficits. They're not going to solve that problem. You solve that problem, you would destroy the dollar as a world reserve currency, and you would absolutely destroy all our exporters. Any manufacturing that we did have, it would absolutely be devastated on that event. You can't fix this problem. That's the one thing. Like, people want to fix it. I don't know why they want to try and I mean, I understand why they want to try and fix it, but the problem that they're going to face is that they're not going to be able to fix it without some serious pain and misery and suffering to be faced because of it. Man, what time is it? I can't believe how late we've gone on this one. What time is it anyway? Is it really that late? Oh my gosh. I ain't trying to change it. I'm going to use the system as it is meant to be used, but that doesn't mean that I don't see that it is wrong. Well, yeah. I mean, hell, I'm out here every day talking about how wrong it is. Right? But then again, I'm not here trying to give it meaning about being right or wrong. It just is, and I have something to do with, like, if it's raining, is that wrong? I mean, I'm not in control of the weather. It's not right or wrong. It just is. I just have to deal with it. It's not wrong. It just is. And if I think about it as wrong, then I must think of it as bad. And if I think it's bad, then it's not good. And if it's not good, then I don't want to be part of it, and therefore I fail. Right? It's not good or bad. It's just an is. It just is the way it is. And since it is the way it is, once you understand how it's operating, then you position yourself accordingly for it. I wish it could be so that my day job was enough. I wish it was so that young girl that I was listening to talk about complaining about working her day job and not being able enough to have an apartment or eat food or all that other stuff. I wish her job was enough. Right? I really do. I wish I could think of ways that I could make it so that everybody could be singing and having a great time and sharing in the enjoyment and the experience of the American dream and all the other stuff. I mean, I really, honestly, truly wish that everybody could have that experience in their life. I really, really, honestly do. But then the reality of the situation says something very different from that. The reality of the situation is that there is a concentration of wealth that is happening to a handful of people, and the average everyday working class individual who used to have an opportunity to take that day job in order to put themselves in a position in which that they have some sort of secured life is not necessarily an option anymore. But your option to secure that way of life is still here. You just can't do it with a regular day job. Right? I mean, you might be able to somewhere, somehow, some possibility, but for the most part, people are going to have to do something far beyond that. And that's where I've been trying to share on this channel for some time. It's not in their control to give you anything different. All right? They can't give you anything different. Even if they wanted to, here, have all the checks you want, right? People are like, well, if you gave us money, we'd be happy, and then they give you a bunch of checks, and then there would be this huge inequality that would result from it because the people who got that checks probably would not go and buy assets with it. Therefore, the money would end up flowing up to the top, right? They would end up back with it. There would be this huge separation between the rich and the poor, and the next thing they're going to ask for is more money. It's like watching the homeless grow in Portland. It was just like, maybe if we just threw a little bit more money at it. Oh, I know. More money, yeah. I mean, right or wrong, what difference does it make at this point? It was just like, I think it's wrong too. Now what? What? I mean, yeah, it's wrong. I think silver's next leg is down. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's had a hell of a run. I can imagine some sell-off. But then again, really, silver should probably be closer to $150 an ounce anyway. The 1% can't control human behavior. Giving money to everyone, the impulse, control, challenge, spend, and the wise buy cash flowing assets, and the rich poor separation happens naturally. It very much does. All right. I think the pain and misery comes around the end of next year. I don't know. Pain and misery for who? Like, do you think the new money turns off next year? I mean, that's essentially when the pain and misery starts, is when the new money turns off. I don't think that's going to happen next year. In fact, what I see is most likely we are going to be moving into tokenization, digital currency, cashless society, and eventual negative interest rates. Now, I hope I'm alive to see all of it, to see if I'm actually correct on any of that stuff, because it's going to take a while. It may happen faster than I think. I don't know. I always think things are happening faster than they are, just because, like, when I get the information, I get it so quickly. I think, man, this must be happening very quickly. But then the more I learn and study and research, the more I realize this is a very slow grind, right? And if it's a slow grind, you can't stop it. It's just like, and every little piece is just like, it's a little closer, a little closer, a little closer, and there's nothing that anybody can do to really stop it. So really, ultimately, even if there was a plan to control the entire thing, which, I mean, I could see it from the New World Order kind of mindset. If there was this, it's not going to happen quickly. It's going to happen very slowly. Because if it happened quickly, you could resist it, but you can't resist it slow grind. Yeah, like you can try, but it's just like resistance is almost futile. I'm already seeing the new loss of the tokenization of everything. It's going to happen pretty quick, I would say, within 10 years. Yeah, I would give that's a reasonable timeline, I would think. They're pissing on us and not even telling us that it's raining. Well, deplorable. Pissing on who? The working class individual who doesn't have a shot anymore? Go get some assets. They don't piss on the asset holders. In fact, they throw candy and chocolates at them. So go become an asset holder, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. I'm long Bitcoin. Yeah, me too, bro. Deplorable and I are finally on the same. Deplorable and I are friends. Don't think that we argue all the time, because we're not friends. We're friends. I mean, I've never met him personally, but we've been here for a while now. Been here for a while now, challenging everything I say. As long as Red Dawn, both 80s version and the newer one, and Terminator never come true, I'll be all right. Nah, you'll be fine. All right, Kyle, get some and hold it in self-custody as it is outside of the system. Talking about Bitcoin. The problem with the bottom 80% having assets, they get rid of them. Yeah, they do. See, that's the hard part, man. You got to buy and never sell. Huh. Makes it almost seem like pointless to buying it if you're never planning on selling it. But if you are really understanding of why you're doing it, you're going to get a hold of those assets and then you're going to hand them down to the next generation who builds up those assets and hands it down to the next generation who continues to build those assets. And then you wonder why it is that you have generational wealth of the massive magnitude that it is. I mean, my dad literally told me, he says, I don't want to die with nothing, kid. You know, I want to spend it all and I'm going to be gone with nothing. And I'm like, hey, that's cool, whatever. Yeah, I mean, that's what you want to do with your money. That's fine by me, you know. But I don't really necessarily have that attitude with my kids, right? You know, and I'm not saying that was a bad attitude from my old man. He gave me all kinds of opportunities and options and, you know, helped me out whenever I needed it. And, you know, he's a great old man. But he comes from a different school of thought. You know, I mean, he basically, you know, you figured it out on your own and that's how you're supposed to do it. And never really took into consideration that, you know, here we have this massive separation that has taken place, you know, with the manufacturing base that is left. Like he got to experience a part of this economy unlike anything like, you know, we get nowadays. That manufacturing powerhouse America was an awesome place to be. And, you know, growing up within that, I mean, he got to face all kinds of issues from being born in 1946 to growing up throughout all the issues that he was facing back then. But the opportunities of an individual to go get a job and make it in this world was a lot easier back then than it is today. Right? So when I think about leaving my kids something, well, I'm trying to leave them something so they don't have to compete in an area in a time in which that average job will not give them an opportunity to get them on the other side of the wedge. If they don't have access to the assets ahead of time, then most likely it's going to be very difficult for them to try and acquire them. But if you already have the assets, it's easier to acquire more of it. And that's the unfortunate part about, you know, separation between the rich and the poor. It's just that's just the way it is. If you have assets, it's easier to acquire more of them. If you don't have any, it's very difficult to acquire any. You know? I like candy and love chocolate. All right, sparkling wishes and dreams, everyone. Well, thank you, Deja. We're going to call it quits here in just a few minutes. 131 people watching with 107 likes. Thank you so much for hitting that like button. By hitting that like button, you help the YouTube algorithm spread this video around for more people to enjoy. At 2.5 hours, I doubt that anybody's going to be making it through this video outside of the people who are watching it here on this live stream. But every day we break this stuff down, and by getting a better understanding of how it is that the current situation has put us into an environment that we have to make ultimate decision on our position that is going to be different from everybody else. Like, we have to understand where we are in our age, you know, 18 getting started, 80 years old trying to retire, or what it is that we're doing for our business, our health, our, you know, finances, as far as dealing with student loans and car loans and all that other stuff that goes with it. Not a single person is going to be in the same position, and nobody is going to be doing the same thing. But understanding the economic forces and understanding the current situation for yourself in this manner, where we have this discussion, where we break down these things regularly and try to understand, you know, the different economic forces and how they play out, gives you a much better understanding of how you're supposed to play your game. And the more we discuss this stuff, the more we have the conversation, the easier it becomes for everybody to then recognize what it is they need to do. Like, there's no way now, like, even Deplorable will have to recognize that when he sees somebody out there talking about the K-shaped economy, that he's not going to be thinking of the Cantillon effect, right? Even people who push back against it will still think of the Cantillon effect when they hear how the separation has taken place, but then not bring up how it's a dive into luxuries, right? Everybody knows it, but nobody wants to admit it. And that's what's scary about it all, you know? You are the man, Simon, and I am your friend. Deplorable, dude, we're bros, right? I mean, we've been here for a while. You push back against a lot of the stuff I say, but I appreciate it because it gives me the ability to actually debate out my point yet again, right? And to try and share how it is that I recognize and see the economy through this, somewhat of a debating process is ultimately how you discover the truth of the matter, especially your truth, because your truth and my truth seem to be different. Just ask anybody in the lumber industry. Like everybody's truth seems to be different when it comes to the lumber industry. Deplorable is a perfect example of the bottom 80%. Jesus. I thought I was the perfect example of the bottom 80%. All right. Don't leave your estate to the probate courts. Consider an irrevocable trust. Yeah. I've always had a soft spot for the underdog. My parents are gone for a long time now. Wouldn't have even been an option. Oh man, Josh, that's terrible. You know, I think about that. Like if I didn't have my parents, even when I was at my worst, it was really my dad being there for me. You know, um, and I think to myself, man, if he wasn't there at one particular moment in my life, it could have been really hard. Like I don't know if I would have been able to recover. Having good parents is ultimately it. Like I mean, I was 30 something years old and I was relying on my dad. And it was just like he essentially gave me a bailout. And and I know a lot of people who face that very similar circumstances in their 30s. Like I mean, I know a few people who said, "Man, and when I was in my 30s, I was not doing well, and it was my parents who helped me out, and now I'm doing much better." But I've heard that story so many times. Well, I think to myself, man, what if you're in your 30s and you didn't have your parents? What do you do? Like, there ain't nobody, you know? So yeah, it's like, you can't expect somebody to just make it. Like there was a time you could have. You'd be like, "Ah, man, you're 18, get out there and figure it out, man." Right? Like that was a real thing that you could have done to somebody and not actually felt bad about doing it. You can't do that to somebody nowadays. Like, I mean, you could. I mean, you can do anything you want, but you can't have that kind of expectations of them. It's just like it is not the same experience out there trying to figure out how to get a job and make it in this world. Not like it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. And so to be able to help your kids out, especially in the times that they need it the most, which is probably not going to be when you would expect it when they're young and stuff. It happens when they're older and they screwed up and they're like, stumbling through life trying to figure out what it is they need to do. It could be that moment many years into their adulthood. I was blessed to have them as long as I did. Dad always told me someday they won't be here and I need to stand on my own feet. He was right. Thank God I listened. Yeah, and that's something I actually I try to I don't want to put like a fear of that into Freddie, like, hey, one day I'm not gonna be here, I would like him to think that I'm gonna be here for a really, really, really long time and he wouldn't have to think about that. But when mom and I are gone, when Sarah and I are gone, it's just gonna be him and his brother. And with nobody else. I mean, I have some family, maybe if we get a little closer, you might have a cousin or something like that. But for the most part, we don't have any tight family relationship, with any other younger members of family out there. And so if he starts to stumble, he's literally going to end up being on his own if we're not around. And that's like I don't want to leave him in that condition. Like if I could set him up from the very beginning to be, in a way that is moving ahead faster. Having that asset allocation mindset. Here's the thing, like I had, because silver has gone up so much, I pulled out some silver and Freddie and I were counting it and looking at it and stuff. And it's pretty amazing, when like I didn't even quite realize how much I had. Like I knew I had a suspicion on how much about I had, but I didn't know exactly how much it was. So we started counting as we were pulling some of the silver out. And I really enjoyed watching Freddie count the silver out. So he has a tube and he's like, okay, there's 20, 40, 60. And I'm like, wow, and I'm watching him pull it out and he's writing it down. He was just like, okay, Dad. He says, well, there's 1,400 in this one. There's another. And he starts counting, and he was just like, okay, so there's $5,000 right here. And he's writing it down on a piece of paper and he's counting it and he's pulling more out. He's not going like, wow, it's $5,000. Like, not even. He's just like putting that one out there. He's writing it down. Okay, Dad, it looks like we have about $5,000 worth of silver in these two, and all this. And he's very chill, very calm about it. We talk about it. And we talked about the story about buying the Suburban because he was there, all right, where I took the 100 ounces of silver to trade for the Suburban. We talked about how I bought it back at that set price, and when I was buying it back, the silver price had moved up. Like, he totally understood the entire deal the entire time. And then when it was all said and done, we packed it all back in, packed it all away, and he grabbed his phone and he went and sat down and started watching, video games or whatever it was on his phone. Like, no big deal whatsoever. Like, it was very chill, very calm, and not like overexcited or anything like that. None of that was taking place. I love that. I love that in him, right? To know that it's abundant in such a way that it's not necessarily exciting. It's just there. It's just an is, Because we talked about it, It was just like, what could we do with this? If there was ever a situation we needed a car, or if there was, if I happened to not have work for a month or whatever, we could use this to make payments. We were talking about all the things that we could do with the silver. And then at the top, and I said, but what do we really want to do with it? And he was like, we want to hold on to it. I said, that's right. We just want to keep stacking this up and building it more and more. Let's go check out this $2 super chat real quick. We got it from Kyle. You the man, Simon. Well, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate the support. All right. Let's see here. Let's cruise down. The dark side of all-nighter. All right. The things I know now that I wish I had known when my boys were small is more than I actually knew at the time I was in my 20s. Crazy how fast 20 years goes by. Oh, gosh, isn't it? I was around 13 when Dad started telling me that he lost his parents early himself and had the knowledge to pass to me. It was great he did. Yeah, and that's, that's really fortunate for you. It's kind of a sad story to hear, like, you don't have your parents, your dad lost his, his parents, whatever. That's a very sad story to hear, but then it's also like it at the same time, it's also like a story of strength, right? Of how it is that you got to realize, man, there may not be anybody else out here. I am really dependent on myself and my decision making that I do. If I sit here and just party it away, I don't have anybody else to rely on and nobody else to blame. But if I'm focused in on my job and what I'm doing and my position that I'm taking, you know, you don't have to really rely on anybody else. You're not even in a position in which that you would need to. That's awesome, but it's also at the same time, when I think about that, like, for me, it would feel great. But when I think about my kids having to face that, it's scary. Like, I don't want them to have to do that. For me, it doesn't sound so scary. Like, for me personally, it sounds great. Like, in fact, it sounds, I would rather have that almost than the alternative to it. But for my kids, I would be very worried for them, and that if they don't have anybody else to help lean, so that they can lean on in times of trouble, that they're literally depending on themselves for 100% of it. If they stumble and can't figure it out, then what? So yeah, it's just like, I very much committed to try and make it, very much committed to figuring out how it is that these kids could get on the right path. Like, I'm not so concerned about myself. Like, there was a time when I never really thought I was going to have anything anyway, so I just kind of came to that conclusion and understanding in my life. But then I was able to figure some stuff out. And when I figured that some stuff out, I'm like, I'm really gonna try and do this for my family. Like if I could give them a good opportunity to have a decent experience, that's my goal. Like I could like to be honest with you guys, I could just sit on the beach all day and just be totally content with that. Like I have no like I don't know what it is that I would even want my life beyond that. You know, like a good view, music, and some food. That's really all I'm asking for. I don't know. There's like all the things that I've ever done in my life. Like I totally enjoy the experiences and having the, you know, the time and all the greatness that came from it. But when it's really at the end of the day, when somebody says, dude, what do you really want in your life? Music, food, and view. That's what I really want. Everything else is just, it's really that it's not that important, you know? I mean, there would be great moments in time that would be excellent to experience, and there would be some pretty cool things that I would like to have as far as like maybe some, you know, new cars or something like that. But all that is just materialistic stuff, and I'm not really into it. It's not me, you know? If anything, I want a secure rate of interest beyond that of my occupation. That's it. Something I can hand down to my kids, even better. You know, if I could do it in such a way that I know that the boys are going to be safe and secure and, you know, they might have to work, but they don't have to struggle. And I feel confident in that. That would be my ultimate reward. That would be my ultimate reward. There's nothing I could think of that would be better than that. Wow. Thank you so much. Timothy Pike, man, thank you so much, bro. I really appreciate it. This is one of my buddies, man. Merry Christmas. Have a great one, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, bro. Stop by the store, say Christmas, man. Shake hands. All right. Christmas to you, Tim. Nice gift. Yes, absolutely, man. Very cool of you. You know, Tim and I had talked, you know, a few times. He has very much the same attitude with his kids, you know. Um, like being able to put them in a position or have at least give them the understanding to handle, you know, what it is that's happening within this world nowadays. We all have to learn and understand it differently for who we are and what it is that we are doing. But ultimately, it comes down to the same thing. We're looking for that security that not only comes to our life, but ultimately for me, it's what it is that I can do to help out for the future, right? Now, whether it's, you know, here on YouTube trying to help out somebody out there who I don't even know, or trying to secure the understanding and a position for my kids, if anything, it's all about the future for me, right? It's all about, you know, securing that future or at least doing something that is going to have a better outcome than the path that I was headed on. Like, you know what I mean? uh, for the kids, we should do right for the kids. Nobody thinks of their future. Yeah. About 3 minutes in, I got over it, retired after 20 years. Isn't it true if you look for security, you will have no freedom? No, I think is if you trade security for freedom, you will have neither and lose both, right? So ultimately, by saying something, it was just like, well, I'll rely on the government for my health care, right? Then you can imagine that you're probably not going to have health care and you're probably going to end up being very disappointed by it all. Having positioned yourself to not rely on the government for it, then most likely you will have the greatest health care, right? If you can position yourself to get it. I mean, you think about it, it's just like, well, I can't afford it. Well, then you're not going to get it anyway because the government's not going to do a very good job of it anyhow, right? So when you think about security versus freedom, a lot of times people will end up giving up what it is that they could do for themselves in order to secure it from somebody else, like the government paying for the health care. Now, if there was nobody paying for health care, insurance, or anything like that, healthcare would not be as much as it is. Here's the problem we now face is that, and this is so funny, I don't know where in the world people thought that they could take a patient and a doctor and make health cheaper, make the health process, the medical treatment cheaper by putting a bunch of middlemen in between it. Right? So here you have all this administration that takes place between the patient and the doctor, and then that's somehow going to make it cheaper for everybody. You see the problem with this logic is now there's all kinds of debate and all kinds of stuff on what we can do about making it cheaper and health and whatever. Okay. You got a patient and you got a doctor, right? The closer you put these two to people together, the cheaper it gets. That's right. And so when you add security to this level, right? Oh, insurance, everybody deserves insurance, right? Well, then the price starts to move up. So now you don't have the ability to get the health care because it's so expensive, right? For the security of the health care itself, the insurance part of it. So giving up the security for the freedom really got none. Yeah. And that happens with just about everything out there. Those are kind of like weak examples of it. There's much more better examples of it when it comes to like, oh, even stuff like, gun rights, being able to protect yourself. How many times have, people been robbed at gunpoint? Now, if everybody was packing, how much gun robberies would there actually be? Like gunpoint rob, like there would be a whole lot less of them. Right? One of the reasons we don't have a whole lot of break-in robberies in our area, like there's not a lot of like breaking into houses. There are some, but for the most part, it doesn't happen very frequently. And when it does, it's usually an inside job. The reason why people don't break into houses a lot around here is because every single household I know here has firearms. Every one of them. Every one of them's packing. You know, I know it's a liberal area, but they really love guns. Oregon is super like the individuals, the citizens, the people themselves, they really like firearms here. I mean, a lot. It's funny because like I don't know if you ever seen that little funny meme that says like people from Oregon just want gay married couples to be able to protect their marijuana plants with guns. That's really kind of like the heart of like a lot of Oregonians. They're very like liberal in a sense, conservative minded in a lot of areas. And really, when you get down to it, they're libertarians for the most part, right? It's a very libertarian mindset, but they just don't realize it because it's so extreme of liberals and so extreme of conservatives. And the liberals scream so much louder than the conservatives do that nobody can really see that deep down inside. We're all very libertarian inside, right? Like even the people who are like, oh man, I'm very sympathetic to all the drug use and all the other things that are going on out there. You know, I am too in a lot of ways. Like, people who do drugs and decide that they're going to do them, man, destroy your life. Go for it, man. I mean, if that's what you want to do with it, man, that's what you're going to do. There ain't nobody who's going to stop you, especially somebody like me. But on the flip side of that, if you want to succeed in this world, then I think you should have an opportunity to do that as well. And being in a position in which that, oh no, man, we got to make sure and take care of these people and those people don't get the benefits and all this other stuff. And I'm thinking, wait a minute here. You got all this too much control, right? Like the idea that you can provide a secure household for somebody who didn't pay for it. Now you got somebody wanting to pay for it who can't afford it. Man, this seems very illogical, doesn't it? Well, if you didn't depend on the government for any of that stuff out there, then you wouldn't be facing any of them problems. You'd have all kinds of other problems, don't get me wrong. I'm gonna have to go here, guys. It's getting late. I gotta go to work tomorrow. Oh man, Josh, that sounds amazing. What did Josh do? St. Thomas, the end of my career was great for mahi. Yeah, I used to do a lot of fishing when I was a merchant marine. 96 to 2002 med cruises and a lot of work ups. I was on restriction for St. Martin. Man, that water was so clear. I've heard Asia does mass production well, but struggles with innovation. How long ago did you get deep into economics? Well, that's a good question. Like, really, it started off probably like I had always been into like like I always collect like the funny coins. I used to call it the funny money collection. Like I would hold on to wheat coins or silver coins or $2 bills or something like that. And I always kind of kept that kind of money just because I was always curious about it. It was just like, man, there's different types of currency. Yeah. But really, it wasn't until the great financial crisis that I really started looking into economics. Up until then, I was very much into politics. Like I was 20 years ago, had you guys known me, like you would have found a completely different person talking about everything out there. It would have been everything would have had a political view behind it, like 100%. I would have been very much like, blaming everything on the liberal mindset, 100%, like it's their fault. Um, you would have seen like a very different attitude coming from me. And then, like, as I was going through the great financial crisis and lost my job and losing the house and the foreclosure and all the other stuff, I was like, obviously, I don't know what the hell is going on. Right? That's pretty apparent. Here I'm failing. I know it's these guys' fault, right? And I've been pointing the finger at them the whole time, so it's got to be them. So frustrating. Watching TV, trying to figure out what's going on. Like I said, it's a great financial crisis and chaos is everywhere. And they're doing like, they're talking about the quantitative. I don't know what the hell quantitative easing is. I don't know anything at that point. And all I kept hearing was these people talking about how it's mortgage-backed securities, mortgage-backed securities. Yeah, like what the frick is a mortgage-backed security? Yeah, what do they do? Oh, all right. Started reading up on mortgage. Next thing you know, I'm reading up on credit default swaps, fractional reserve banking. What is? And I just kept asking questions. What is this? What is this? What is it? And every time I'd ask a question, I would get like 4 more questions that I would ask. Right? And like I would start reading up, and then I would have like 4 questions, and I would start reading up on those, trying to answer those, and I get 4 more questions, and it is more questions, more questions, more questions. And I'm like, man, how deep is this? This is difficult. Right? Years went by, and I would get like kind of like an understanding of some things. Like I followed Peter Schiff for a long time, so I was very much into the idea of like a precious metal gold standard kind of idea, and like pushing that idea, get rid of the fiat and the Fed, kind of aspects. Really had that kind of channeled that idea. And then I realized as time went on that I was missing out on opportunities all over the place by being just solely in silver. And in fact, I found that it didn't really help me out at all when the silver price actually fell. I went into foreclosure. I had absolutely nothing except for this damn box of silver. And it was just like one of the most depressive things. And I'm realizing, man, I am not getting this right. Like I got some stuff, and I think some stuff I got right, but for the most part, I'm looking at this very inaccurately. And so when I took another step back away from it, and it was just like, so what do I understand about this? We had a gold standard, we got this fiat standard, got this issue with financing that, participates within this, broader economy. And the more I kind of stepped away from it all and just kind of looked at it as pieces, as opposed to like a conditioned system that was invented and created, but more of like a manifestation of reality, that kind of just comes into this existence. I looked at it much differently. So now I look at it as like the fiat currency financial system is interacting with the broader economy, and the way that people have interacted with it is it's created this massive inequality. And so now people say, well, what can be done about that? And I'm like, oh, well, nothing. You can't do anything about that. But you can figure out how to operate within this system. So knowing that this is going to happen, that this new money is going to pour in and the separation is going to occur, what is it that you need to do as an average everyday person to deal with this? Because if you borrow money to buy a car, which is what most people would want to do with borrow money so that they have a nice vehicle to drive around, that's going to deny you the ability to acquire assets, which is what's going to get you onto the other side of the wedge. And so instead of thinking like, what is it that I need to do to have the best job so that I can have like, a good career with a good income so that I can take care of my family? Instead, it was, how do I get into flow so that I can cut back on my expenses and move into asset allocation? Which was a different mindset from what career path do I choose in order to get the best pay to what is it that I need to do in order to acquire money from different avenues. Right? It doesn't matter how much money I make, right? You can go for a career that earns $100,000, $150,000 a year, it still won't be enough. But if you can find several different paths of revenue while cutting back on your expenses, you are very much in the position of flow. And if you do it just right, you can increase your flow and start moving into asset allocation. This is a different mindset. It seems very similar in a lot of ways, but it's very different in the reality of the situation. Right? Here, one, you work real hard, you try to acquire, pay off the debts, get the house, get the, all those possessions in your life to make it look like you're actually living a decent world. And then you have another one where you're like, I'm not worried about any of that stuff. I have this asset allocation that nobody can really see except for me, right? But that's the only part that's important. And this kind of position is then going to have me in an ability to then live somewhat better than if I just had the job itself. Right? Again, I'm viewing this the more and more I step away from the system and looking out at it. My $500 beater put me way ahead of on my fiscal journey. Yeah, me too. That $500 Toyota Corolla was absolutely the machine of all machines, man. I mean, it wasn't much to look at. It was $500. It ran like a top, and that gave me the ability to save $42,000 to buy a house. I could have spent the $42,000 on a new car, but I kept the 99 Toyota Corolla and I bought a house instead. Right? Because I understand, intuitive. I mean, I may have not quite understood it to the level I do right now, but 4 years ago, I knew that it was more important to be in assets than it was to have something awesome in my life, like a new car. All right. Change in mindset is the key. That's what most people don't seem to understand. You can thank the Honor Society of Japan for that. Alrighty, guys, it's 3 hours into this thing. I'm gonna go. I gotta go to bed. Thank you so much for being out here enjoying the live stream of the Uneducated Economist. We have 113 people who are still watching with 113 likes. I love it when we have as many likes as we have people viewing. So, breaking this stuff down, making it understandable for people to know what they need to do in their lives. This is what we're doing here on the Uneducated Economist, and I can never thank you guys enough. Simon, you rock as always. Thanks. Well, thank you guys. Let me just read these last few, and then we're going to call it night. Simon, you rocks as always. Hope men like to be reflexive, resist change, kind of predictive. Thanks, Simon, and everyone. Thank you, all-nighter. Good night. Well, good night, XG8. That's why Toyota and subbies are so strong. Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Simon. Thank you, Justin. Thanks, Simon. Going to get rest at Okinawa Beach right now. Oh, wow. Right on. Okinawa Beach. Very cool, man. I appreciate you, Moses, for being here. And thank you for all the comments, too, and lots of great questions you had. Thanks, Simon. Have an awesome night. Thank you. Love the cult following here of good people. Yeah, me too, all-nighter. It's somewhat that way, too. But you guys are awesome, and we're really doing this for the benefit of everybody here. Getting a better understanding of economics and how to position ourselves, knowing that we're each going to do it a little bit differently from each other. I would love to meet a bunch of you. Consider attending some of the events like the RCL. Yeah, Wayne, absolutely, man. That is, the Rebel Capitalist, Zuber's event, these things are really, they're amazing events. And I know a lot of people say like, well, what can you really get out of it? when you're there, you would understand it. It is just a different type of energy. It's a different experience. And really, like the speakers, especially for like the rebel capitalists and stuff, the speakers are incredibly informative. In fact, they are so much so that it's almost like too much information. It's like information overload. But being able to actually meet some of these guys and then hear them in person and then meet a lot of the other like people within the mindset, right? Within this subculture of economic enthusiasts, like this networking of people or the meeting of different like-minded individuals, this is really how you end up carrying yourself up to the next level. See, like I know for me personally, like I wasn't doing well hanging out at the bar. Those guys, that my friends and everybody, they're they're awesome dudes. Like the best dudes. You know, like these are guys who will do anything for you. They are very honest and hardworking and dedicated individuals. Like they're awesome dudes. However, there's one thing for being awesome, and then there's another thing for actually trying to advance and move up, right? And so when you have people who are attempting to kill it, start businesses, moving forward, advancing onward, that's a different mindset from like hanging out and joking around down at the bar, which is just fine. I mean, it's a great time down there, but other things are motivated and moving, right? So if you're hanging out with five guys who are down at the bar, then you're most likely like you're hanging out with four, you're the fifth guy who's going to be like that group, right? If you're hanging out with four dudes like that. If you're hanging out with four guys who are business minded, active, and moving in that direction, you're going to be the fifth dude, right? Who's doing that sort of thing. That's what happens when you start hanging out at things like the Rebel Capitalist or Zuber's event. Is this is the type of group like you can hang out at the bar with those guys joking around and telling jokes or whatever, or you can go and meet with a group of people who are figuring out business, figuring out how to be in the flow and stuff like that. And that's generally ends up being what you do too if you're hanging out with people who do that. All right, George is getting sensationalist lately, less pragmatic than I remember. Oh, is he? You know, and this is the problem with, I think, a lot of us, and even I have a tendency to do it here on the channel when I'm trying to, get attention or something or make money. I don't know how you want to put it. But I will sensationalize something as well. And when I recognize that I have done it, I really have to question. It was just like, dude, what are you doing? It was just like, are you trying to be helpful and useful, or are you trying to just come out here and just, sell newspapers essentially? Because if I'm not being helpful and useful, then I don't really feel like I'm doing what it was that I had set out to do. Like I set out to try and be helpful and useful to get a better understanding of economics. And really it was a selfish move because I was trying to figure it out for myself, to figure out what it is that I needed to do in order to have a better way in my world, in my existence. And by sharing this on this channel, like I essentially use the channel like a journal. This is some of the things that I'm reading, I'm studying, and I'm thinking about. And I shared those experiences here on this channel. I found that really started to expand what it was that I was learning, what it was that I was, finding as far as information from other people, and what it is that other people were discovering from the information that I had. This is turning out to be a very symbiotic relationship between me and the viewers, right? Where the viewers are learning and then I'm learning an insane amount, right? And I share that with the viewers themselves, and hopefully they're able to retain some of it themselves or at least get some sort of use out of it. But ultimately, it came down to a very selfish move on my part to then gain as much economic knowledge as I possibly could get. This channel has totally done that for me. Like I'll debate anybody on monetary policy at this point. I don't care who they are. Jerome Powell. I mean, put anybody up there on that seat. I will debate monetary policy with anybody out there. I think I have it that well dialed in. And which is really crazy because nobody else out there has even come close to describing monetary policy the way that I have. And so I don't know how many other people are out there as confident at debating monetary policy as I am to pick anybody out of the lineup. I mean, I really don't care. You can put anybody up there. Put Hassett, put Powell, put Daniel DiMartino Booth. I don't care who you put up there. right? At this point, I will have a conversation and I will debate monetary policy with anyone. Okay? And I will tell my same story that I have been telling the entire time because I know from my research that I have it more accurate. Okay? Because I never really do I ever hear anybody bringing up the problems that the Federal Reserve was facing prior to COVID. Right? And with that, I know that I'm on it. I mean, everybody else seems to think, oh man, the Fed doesn't know what they're doing. And I'm like, that works out pretty well for them. All right. I'm going to go, guys. You're awesome. Simon, one of those thinking peasants. Yeah, that's about it, too. The fourth quarter of 2026 looks like we may have a major market top according to the charts I look at. Well, keep us informed as we get closer to it. Like, give us the updates on that. I'm not somebody who reads charts. Like, I mean, I look at charts and I see a bunch of stuff spiking around. It's like, how do you read that thing to make it look right? I see people put these candlesticks and they draw these, trend lines and channels and all kinds of stuff. And I've done the same thing, but I never really seem to do it accurately. Maybe I just don't know what the hell I'm looking at. So if you could keep us updated on those charts, on what it is that you're seeing and why it is that, that it may be forming that top like you were saying, we would love to have your insight on that and have a better understanding of what it is that's taking place when that comes. So. Man, 3 hours and 14 minutes into this live stream. You guys are awesome. I read you all night, hider. Also, auto-corrected is never duck. I was 5 months earlier moving my 401k in 2019, but I avoided the COVID crash. Well, that's awesome, Joshua. All right, safety meeting time. I hear you. Charts are good, but they're only percentage predictions. Evening hider, get ready for the rain. All right, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Ultra long live stream tonight. 120 people still watching with 118 likes. You guys are awesome. Uneducated Economist, you let me know.